It's time for TWiT This Week in Tech. Amy Webb is here, our futurist. Devindra Hardawar from the Engadget. Christina Warren from GitHub. What a great panel. Great way to start the new year. We're going to talk about AI, of course, but first, let's talk about CES. It starts in 2 days. Oh, guess what? AI is going to be the big topic at CES. We'll talk about the passing of a computer legend and Elon Musk. Oh my goodness, the Wall Street Journal just discovered he's been using drugs. What are we going to do? It's all coming up next on TWiT.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Tech, episode 961, recorded Sunday, January 7th, 2024. A nation of nerds. This Week in Tech is brought to you by Lookout. Your data is always on the move, whether on a device, in the cloud, across networks, or at the local coffee shop. Now, while that's great for your workforce, it is a challenge for IT security. Lookout helps you control your data and free your workforce. With Lookout, you'll gain complete visibility into all your data, so you can minimize risk from external and internal threats. Plus, ensure compliance. By seamlessly securing hybrid work, your organization doesn't have to sacrifice productivity for security. Working with multiple point solutions and legacy tools in today's environment, it's just too complex. With its single unified platform, Lookout reduces IT complexity, giving you more time to focus on whatever else comes your way. Good data protection. It's not a cage, it's a springboard, letting you and your organization bound toward a future of your making. Visit lookout.com today to learn how to safeguard data, secure hybrid work, and reduce IT complexity. That's lookout.com. It's time for TWiT This Week in Tech. First show of 2024. That's exciting. And best panel of the year so far. Amy Webb is here. Always love having Amy on. Future Today Institute. She is our Greg LeMond of the tech sphere. She's a serious bicyclist now. Hello, Amy. Good to see you. How long have you been a serious cyclist?
I did mountain biking in college. And then I moved to Japan and switched over to martial arts. And then I got in a bad accident. Oh, wow. And then I got pregnant. And then I gained a lot of weight. And then I tried running. That didn't work. And then I got back on the bike about 6 years ago.
When I was a kid, I loved riding my bicycle. It is the best. Didn't Steve Jobs say computers are bicycles for the mind? It is, yes. I think, the most efficient form of human transport, right?
It is. It also requires a ton of focus if you ride seriously, and
that's good.
And it's also, it can be really technical and like really, really dangerous if you're in it for speed. But it can be fun, So yeah.
Nice. Well, yeah, because the only reason I know this, I see your Instagram posts and you look like you're working hard sometimes. And I'm going, wow, she is really dedicated. It's very impressive.
Thank you. I will start posting where I'm doing a lot of long fondos, so 50 to 100 miles races this year, and rides.
How long does that take? 100 miles?
The last fondo I did was pouring down rain about 2 miles in, and I cried crossing the finish line. It took like the day. It was horrible.
A day and yikes. Also with us, the wonderful Christina Warren. Haven't seen you since, you're wearing the hat, GitHub Universe.
I am wearing the hat, GitHub Universe.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's great to see you again. She works for GitHub as a senior developer advocate. And is at great pains to tell you, do not DM her on Twitter because...
You can't. Unless you work at Twitter, in which case, please help me out. Because something happened to my account and I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm stuck in a Kafka-esque hellscape and I can't get out of it. And my account has been limited for some reason. And anyway, it's help me. So yeah, that's my plea. But no, don't follow me on Twitter right now. Follow me on Mastodon.
Look at this. When they block you, they take away everything.
No, exactly. And again, like the last thing I tweeted was literally like, tune in tomorrow for GitHub Universe.
Well, that shouldn't have violated X's rules.
No, I didn't violate any rules because I didn't even get a notice that I did. At first, it was, we think someone has hacked you because I changed my display name. And then I changed my password a few times. I think the network I was on was weird.
How long have you had? How long have you had film at at film_girl. How long have you had that?
I mean, I joined Twitter in 2007, but I was using that username and other things probably going back to like 2002.
But you were on Twitter from the the earliest people, it's like late 2006. You've been on it ever since the beginning.
I've been on like basically the very beginning. Like I was a little bit late. I think it was, I resisted for a few months. I first heard about Twitter actually from you on the
Oh, that's funny. I'm sorry.
I think it was when it went big at South by Southwest.
Yeah.
Because I was still in college.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to join that. That's stupid. Fast forward a few months and I do finally join. And fast forward a few years and it like was a significant part of my career like why people got to know me and whatnot. And then fast forward a few more years and it's no longer our home.
Yeah, isn't that sad? Also with us, a guy who's filled in for me now twice this past year. And I said, you know what? I want to be here sometime when Devindra Hardawar is on. Devindra, it's great to see you.
Happy to be here. Happy 2024.
Happy
everybody.
2024. Senior
what a year
editor
it's been
Engadget.
already. Yeah.
You are. I would have thought you'd be on an airplane on your way to Las Vegas right now.
We kind of split the team. So CES is happening, but half of the Engadget staff are there and half are home. And just we have 2 kids. I don't want to leave my wife alone with 2 kids. They're just very young. So maybe next year. Love to.
Engadget has always, CES and Engadget kind of go together. It's always been a big part of Engadget's portfolio is the CES coverage.
Yeah, we did the official awards forever.
Yeah,
we're not doing them anymore, but we were tied there.
Yeah. I guess, Christina, probably you're not going to CES, I'm thinking.
No. I haven't been in a few years. Well, it's interesting because when I worked at Microsoft did sometimes have a presence there, not big like they used to back in the day, but they might have like a smaller team that would go. And a couple of times I was potentially approached about going, and I was always like, I don't think enough time has passed for me to go back.
Yeah.
Now that it's been like, last time I went was 2017. So I would maybe go again. It would totally depend. But no, I'm not going this year, obviously. Yeah. If somebody wants to invite me next year, maybe.
It's one of those things where there's an amnesia that sets in. I don't know how many years it takes. Many of us haven't gone since COVID, which would be now. This would be the 4th year since COVID. Actually, the 3rd. I went in January 2020 before we really knew that there was this epidemic coming.
Right, because they hadn't canceled things yet. That's right, because I remember that because I was literally about to leave for the airport. The last trip that I took was in February of 2020, and then I was about to leave for the airport in March of 2020 to go to Zurich, and they canceled. Like literally, I was about to get into a car, and January 2020. There was question, but it wasn't.
Yeah, we went. But it takes, I think, maybe 4 or 5 years before you forget the pain. It's like childbirth, maybe. I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
That you forget the pain and say, hey, we could do that again. Amy,
I wouldn't know either, but that seems similar. I don't know.
No, I'm actually going to Davos, not CES.
You're going to the World Economic Forum?
Yeah, but I remember I used to go to CES every year, and I feel like the last year that I was there was, so veterans will remember this. There was a spot in a hallway where you could sit on the stairs, and there was sort of like this Y intersection.
Yep.
And there would be a cluster of men, and it was always men, who would get to that point in the stairwell, look right, look left, and I would play this game that was called, are they going back to CES or are they going over to AEN?
Yes.
Adult Entertainment News?
AVN.
AVN, sorry. Adult Video News, right.
So this was the fork in the road between porno.
Yep.
Well, they're both porno, but one is electronics-based and one is video-based. Yeah, they had them the same time.
They used to overlap. And I would sit in the hallway also because, I would get tired, but I would sit there and just people watch and try to guess who was going to go in which direction.
That's a great game.
I got very, very good at it. So
you can always tell.
I'm not.
What was the tell? What was the giveaway?
Absolutely. I cannot. I'm going to get hate trolled forever. So no, I will not divulge. Someday we'll go to a bar and I'll tell you what I saw, but I cannot unsee.
That needs to be a Twitch game, by the way, a Twitch stream.
There was a Twitch stream?
No, that should be.
It should have been. Somebody should do that. Well, they can't anymore because
they moved. I think they moved it. Now it's in a totally different place. And
First they moved off site and then they moved to a later date.
Yeah.
So you can't.
Anyway, but I haven't been to CES in years. And that 2020 CES, I was in Davos at Webb at the annual meeting. And I knew something bad was happening because the Chinese contingent was not there. And, it was like they normally don't not show up for things. And I was just like, this is probably going to be really bad. And then I'm at South by in March every year. And that was the year that we were waiting to see what was going to happen with South by. And of course, they were the first to.
Oh, man.
To cancel.
The South by that wasn't. We had such great plans for that South by.
You know what, though? They killed it. That team, I think, did an amazing job of pulling together. Because honestly, they really needed the city to cancel the event because of their insurance. Yes. And the city didn't. And it really kind of screwed them over. Yeah. So I thought South by did a phenomenal job that year of pulling something off within like a few days. Anyways,
it's kind of sad they were forced to sell it as a result of the losses.
Well, they didn't sell it. The Penske family took a stake in it, so it's not sold outright.
But Penske has a big portion of it now.
They do, along with a bunch of other media properties. So, no, it's still the same crew running it, and they're awesome people, and they've been around forever. Yeah. And if you haven't registered, I will plug. That'll be the thing I plug. Like everybody should register for South by because it's going to be awesome in a couple months.
And as the World Economic Forum is happy to tell you, there's only 7 days, 18 hours, 19 minutes, and 46 seconds. Yeah. We will be rebuilding trust in 7 days, 18 hours, ladies and gentlemen.
Finally.
Finally.
It's great.
So Jeff Jarvis used to go to Davos every year, too. And I always kind of mocked him about this because this is what is Davos?
Well, okay, hang on. So there's a lot of people who sort of go to Davos. And for those of you listening, I'm doing the air quotes. So I do I'm on a lot of boards and I do a lot of stuff with the forum. So the folks who are on the list have to go through this whole security process, and there is an interior security perimeter, and that's where the main things happen. There's a whole bunch of people, though, a lot of journalists that descend to the city of Davos and are in other places where they're, like Meta has usually every year, like Palantir's got a house, Microsoft usually has a bunch of stuff there. And so journalists can get sort of a day pass to go to that type of thing, but you cannot. So, and I'll just say this because I get a little irritated every year at the horrific, like people making fun of it and all this negative coverage. Most of those people are not on the inside and have absolutely no idea what's actually happening.
We think of it as kind of the Bohemian Grove or maybe Allen and Company, where it's a bunch of big wigs getting together and planning our futures behind closed doors.
That is exactly what's happening. That is very much a lot of what's happening. It's also a lot of it's a whole bunch of meetings and a whole bunch of stuff, but it's not some kind of secret cabal situation.
Well, how is that different? If they're, it sounds like it sounds to me.
Well, for one thing, Business Insider usually gets its hands on the list and publishes the list.
We know who's there. But we don't know what happens behind those closed doors. I mean, are they planning our future?
I will tell you. So realistically, most of my time is spent. I run the company, but my time is spent with CEOs of other companies, and it's very, very challenging because everybody is so busy to find time to meet. And so one of the things about Davos is that it's one time when everybody's in one spot and can have conversations that's just really, really hard to get on calendars at other times of the year. So, and yes, that's behind closed doors, but they would be behind closed doors anyways in whatever other city. So it's not like there's some kind of Illuminati style terrible thing that's happening.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's just out in the open.
They're planning our future all the time. That's their job. Is there government there though? That's the question. Is government talking to them?
Yeah.
See, this was always the concern. Like at the Bohemian Grove was that the government, like the World Bank, is telling the Fed what the interest rate should be.
No. So the United States usually does not have a presence. And what really sucked was when Trump decided to go. And we have some presence, but presidents don't
usually a president wouldn't attend. No, it would be George Shultz would go. Henry Kissinger would go. Yeah,
sure.
Who we know actually is really the president. But they have this figurehead who gives the speeches. But meanwhile, the Secretary of State or somebody is like,
I mean, yeah, I would hope that the Secretary of
Dick
State
Cheney's in there, and yeah, right.
All right.
I'm being
Trump, yes. Not everybody's going to get that. Trump was annoying because he always had this cadre of 40 or so photographers with him, and he did this like
it was
I'm
always
a fine
an
lady.
event. Yeah.
Like I'm in my prom dress and I'm entering now, and everybody should be taking pictures of me. And I was like, I literally just need to go to the bathroom. Can you please step anywhere? Just move aside because you're blocking the washroom for everybody.
To be fair, it would probably be like that for any American president at something like Davos, right? They're disruptive by their very nature. Yeah.
Well, they're not, though, because there's tons of presidents from other countries there, and they don't have an army of photographers with them.
No, that's true.
So, I mean, that's most of who's there.
Were you there when the Donald was there?
Yeah.
Did you get close enough to smell him?
I just wanted to go to the bath. Honestly, like he just kept like walking around like he got a new Birkin
this
bag.
This is completely beyond. Let's go back to CES. That was just gossipy on my part. There, just if you don't know, there've been a lot of stories lately about how he smells, and I was just curious.
I did not know that.
A lot of filet of fish will do that to you. So,
yeah. Don't eat. Yeah. Anyway,
that's your diet. Yeah.
Anyway, from WEF to CES, what is you must, being a senior editor over there at the Engadget, have some idea of what we're going to expect at CES. Is there anything? It's been a while since CES ever broke something, a big story, right?
Yeah, I don't think anything's going to break here. It's a lot of more of the same. There's a term we're probably going to be hearing more and more of this year, though, and I don't know if you guys have talked about it, but it's AI PC. And that's Intel and AMD with these new chips, with their new laptop chips that have NPUs built into them.
It's ironic. The ironic part of all this, and you know this, is Apple put an NPU in their iPhone 5 years ago.
2017. Yeah.
8 years ago, 7 years ago. And frankly, all of the Apple Silicon devices have pretty robust machine language coprocessors built in them. The PC side is just getting caught
Siri,
up.
everything relies on that.
Yeah. So this is kind of the PC world catching up.
Basically, that's what all of this has been. But it is kind of interesting, like what developers could be doing. Audacity and Adobe and others have said that they're going to build things that can tap into your NPU.
That's also the irony of it, is that Apple has been so privacy focused that they're doing things like fingerprint reading or face reading, and they're not doing ChatGPT style AI, even though the hardware is capable of it. In fact, Apple, Mark Gurman just published his Bloomberg newsletter today, basically saying Apple is woefully behind, like more than a year behind in AI.
Well, I don't know that they're behind. I think they're just behind in commercializing or talking about it, because they created they've actually been doing a lot. They have
their LLM. They have a new LLM. Yeah.
They made with Columbia.
Yeah.
That's meant to be on device. So AI at the edge kind of thing. Ferret, right. Which is kind of somewhat interesting to me that they went open source, because Apple is the grand poobah of keeping everything tightly controlled and secrets and walled gardens and all the rest of it. But Apple is not a hyperscaler, right? Microsoft, because of of Azure, and Amazon because of it, those are hyperscalers. So I think part of what's happening is you've got a consumer goods company in Apple, which is going to have to make a transition to become some form of a hyperscaler in order to compete.
It's weird because Apple tends to do things after everybody else, right? They didn't make the first MP3 player. They didn't make the first smartphone, but they made the ones after seeing the mistakes that everybody else made. But everything happened so quickly with AI. So in the past year, we haven't heard much. We're like, oh man, you're done. We can't
Isn't that funny?
About AI anymore.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Oh, you lost. The race is not only not over, it has just barely begun.
It's just begun, and they've, I think, focusing on things that we're actually using, like focusing on the computer vision stuff and making Face ID faster and using the neural engine for that. That's useful to people. Waiting to see what a developer does with an MPU, that's what Intel and AMD are going to be doing, and we're going to have to wait a while to see if those things actually pay off.
I'm also, I'm kind of more into, I don't know. Jan LeCun did a good interview in, I think was it Wired, with Stephen Levy, in which he says open source is really where you want AI to grow, because you don't want any one company to control this. You don't want it to be a Meta thing and he works for Meta. You don't want it to be a Microsoft thing. You don't even want it to be an OpenAI or Anthropic thing. You want it to be open source. So in that regard, I'm glad Apple's doing it that way. And I think it is very interesting if you've got the hardware to do it locally, to do it on device, so that it's not being sent up to the cloud.
And just things that will happen more quickly, like Apple's talked about on-device Siri pings, and stuff on your Apple Watch. When you ask for Siri, it doesn't just like fetch to the cloud and, trigger all that stuff. It just happens. Things can just happen. So we'll probably see more of that on PCs. Like that is certainly the future version of like Copilot for Windows or something. So
that's reassuring,
but also
to individuals concerned about privacy and to companies concerned about data exfiltration. Go ahead.
Definitely.
You're saying Jan LeCun?
I was saying, like Elon LeCun, it is funny to see him like champion open source, where he is the guy who's also saying authors should not be paid for writing books. So,
Can we just double click here, because this is bullshit. Yeah. And let's talk about why. So I think it's rich that Llama 2 is, so this is Meta's product.
It leaked out, right? And then they opened it.
So basically it's like open source. No, none of it is for commercial use. But
exactly.
This entire business ecosystem, which is the stuff that I pay attention to, is built using the same concept that Facebook was built on, which means all of Facebook's value comes from UGC, user-generated content. So do we think that magically now, because we've put the words open source in front of Llama or anybody else's LLM, that magically this changes anything? It doesn't. All this is really going to do is it's a new way of commoditizing people's work. And it's still the largest companies that are doing this. So what you have now is, I think, just like a further entrenchment and a further concentration of power, but under the guise of open source, so that's somehow going to like make everything better and assuage everybody's concerns.
I defer to your expertise in this, but let me give you an example of why I think it's a good thing. I was able to, there's a open source program called ChatGPT for All. The idea being you're going to run this locally on your device. The problem is you still need a large LLM. Thankfully, because there are public LLMs, you can use an API to talk to OpenAI, but that's still sending data up to them. But you can download Llama and other derivatives like that onto your machine. You can then give it a corpus of information, and you can create an expert system that does not call out to the cloud. That to me seems to me a benefit that does not, in fact, the original LLM had to be created by a big giant company using lots of TPUs.
But that's actually a pretty important thing. I think that you can't just like ignore that aspect, right? Like you're talking about the fine tuning thing that you're doing on device, and the fact that you like that can be more private for you. And to be clear, with the other hosted models, there are, depending on what license you're under, the amount of information that you send back to them, especially if you're under like a corporate thing. Like I know if you use like the Azure OpenAI service, I know if you use certain things from Bedrock, it's not actually retraining that information based on what you're sending to it. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, but you are still contacting the cloud and you're sending your query to the cloud.
Yes.
There is still some data collection going on, whereas where I do it locally, nothing is going to the cloud.
We should separate out data collection and privacy, which is I think a good argument, from what is the economic value of what's being generated, and therefore the argument that's being made about open source, I think, falls apart.
Yeah, but I would also just go back and say, I think that, and I think you're exactly right on that, but I would also just want to push back a little bit on I don't think that we can dismiss so quickly the fact that the actual, like you're talking about the fine tuning aspect, and that's fine that you want that localized and you want that specific, because I think that makes sense. But we cannot at all ignore that the main model and the main way that was trained, most of those models are not actually open source. The data is not open source, even if they make parts of the model available, and even if they make parts of the data that people can train against available, that is usually pretty closed off. And B, we don't know what that's all been trained on. And there's, a lot of people who have lots of opinions on how that data set was trained to begin with. So I think that, look, I'm in favor of open sourcing more things, but I also tend to agree that a lot of companies are using, especially Facebook, to be quite honest, they're using the language open source, even though what Facebook's doing is not open source.
It's very whitewashing.
It's open access under specific conditions, and that's a good thing. And I'm not against that, but it's not open source. And I quibble with using that language because I think the language is important to be specific on. But I think that they're doing it for not altruistic reasons. They want everyone to be dependent on their models and their tooling because they can then find ways to monetize that. It's not as if they think this is good for humanity, and it's also not as if a lot of these specific models themselves will never be made open. Just because you have a localized thing that you might be able to train something against doesn't mean that you actually have access to all the different inference points and data parts that encompass that model.
Okay, I'm on Nomics. I don't want to go too much in the weeds on this, but it's kind of depends on what you define open source. These models are downloadable. Nomic license them, MIT license. They're large language models that can run locally. Maybe I don't know I don't have the access to the.
They're also not all very
training.
good. To be honest, the training and also not all of them are very good. I mean that's the other thing too. Llama is interesting because it's actually good, but a lot of these things that you can do locally, they're fun, they're toys.
Well, aren't they going to get better? I mean, isn't this where you want development and work to go? Make it better?
Leo, it requires people. So this is the other huge thing that most people don't understand. You need armies and armies of people who are doing labeling.
You wouldn't have Linux without an army of people creating and contributing to Linux, right?
I guess the issue is the vast majority of people are using the user interfaces that are super simple and don't require. So again, it's the big tech players who are in the space. So I agree with you. In a perfect world, we would have systems that are clean and opt-in and, everybody would be on the up and up, but that's just not the situation we find ourselves in yet again.
All right. Well, anyway, I forgot how we got into this. Open source is going to be all over CES. That's how we got into it. I mean, not open source, AI. Sorry, open source will not be all over CES. AI will be everywhere. Is AI starting to become like blockchain, a kind of a term that really means nothing?
People are just throwing it on, product descriptions and some product names and stuff too. So we got to watch out for that. But I think Ed and Gadget, we really have not covered much of the blockchain stuff because I think a lot of us called this is BS.
Yeah.
This is nothing. So there's a lot of stuff that we kind of passed on. But AI, we've seen it transform things. We've seen what ChatGPT can do. We've seen how it's completely changed the way Microsoft is approaching things too. And I have my issues with that and kind of how Microsoft is kind of going all in on it without quite knowing where it's going to take us. But
hey, look, Apple's going all in on Vision Pro without knowing where it's going to take us. That's what companies do.
There's a difference.
Right?
Vision Pro is not the entire future of the company.
No, but I would bet that Apple has spent at least $100 billion on Vision Pro over the last 10 years, right? So
I mean, it's a bold bet. It is a bold bet, but I don't know. I got to test that thing, and I could see how it could lead us to something cool.
Yeah.
I just add one other quick thing before we hop off of AI.
We're going to never hop off of AI. Trust me.
No, but as it relates to interest and what's what. So I was with Brad Lightcap, who's OpenAI's COO, a couple months ago, and he was telling me that he talks to a lot of people who don't realize that OpenAI is a company and ChatGPT is their product.
Right.
And to me, that's analogous to some of, AI or generate. When people talk about AI right now, they're not talking about Yes, they're talking about generative AI. And by and large, when business people talk about generative AI, what they're actually talking about is automation.
Yes.
So that's a fundamental challenge going forward because the expectations have been set, especially by investors, that AI writ large is going to do all this stuff. And my concern is, given where the hype is, that we wind up where we were in the 80s when all of these promises were made. There was nowhere close to the compute, by the way, that would have been required to do any of what was being described. And we wound up in an AI winter. And I think that from a national security standpoint, among other things, that would be a really, really bad situation for us to be in.
No, I agree. I mean, I think this is a good thing. You bring up the compute aspect. I think that's why we're able to be where we are right now. And that's why people have opened up possibilities again. But the expectations and what's actually there, couldn't agree more. I think there's sometimes a disconnect. But certainly, this is why people like companies like NVIDIA have been doing so well, because they've spent 15 years investing in not just growing their compute business on the GPU side, but also with CUDA and creating a language that is kind of the de facto thing that people are using when it comes to training these models and running these things. So
I wouldn't expect a whole lot of business automation stuff at CES. It's going to be that other kind of AI, right? It's going to be whatever that is.
That's what I would think.
Well, it's the science fiction thing that normal people like me think of when you say AI. And it's really true that I at first thought that AI was another gimmick like blockchain. It wasn't going to be particularly interesting. And having lived through a few AI winters, was very aware of that, over-promising and under-delivering. But I'm increasingly impressed by Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. And I have a couple of custom GPTs I made for myself that are incredibly useful as expert systems. And we use AI to generate show notes, to generate clips from our shows. We're using it more and more at TWiT. So I'm much more convinced of now that's business automation, I would guess. But anyway,
like transcription.
Yeah, that's business automation.
Yeah.
But the expert systems I'm building, I don't know what you would call that. I mean, I don't know. I think that there is some value. Certainly, Stable Diffusion is not part of the business automation sector. I guess we're going to get to. We don't need to do it yet. Well, I want to finish the CES conversation, but we're going to get to this whole issue of the New York Times lawsuit and who owns the content that is generating these LLMs, and do the LLMs have the right to access it, and what does copyright have to say about that? But let's finish CES first. Is there a particular AI implementation you think is going to, Devindra, be important to consumers to pay attention to? Like I don't know, a toilet that you can diagnose your illnesses?
I mean, we've lived through the smart home wave at CES. We've lived through 3D TV. So there's just like a whole load of BS that you really have to sift through at that show.
A lot of people say that they're excited about the smart home, that it's back. Like,
it's back, baby.
Well, Samsung has that
every year,
robot with the mop.
A mopping robot. Now, what more
Samsung's big thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. LG has a robot that can watch your pet for you. So it has 2 wheels in it.
By the way, all it does is look at your pet, and that's it. But that's good. Okay.
That's it. I can't really tell what's good with AI at this point at CES, but
there's always going to be junk. There's always going to be junk.
There's always going to be junk. But on the PC front, it is interesting to see both Intel and AMD kind of jump on this thing and also say, like, we're trying to get developers on board. We're trying to make this a thing. And the NPU has the potential to be like, the next thing like a GPU and deal with some low-level tasks on your computer. So your next device could do some cool things like better background blurring and stuff like that without hitting your battery too much.
I think it's really interesting, these new earbuds using MEMS technology that you talk about. Mm-hmm. That's kind of intriguing. MEMS is electromechanical machines. These are nanobots in effect, but they're actually physical machines. Mm-hmm. They're used widely. You actually have MEMS in your house, probably. Many scales use MEMS, and my June oven has MEMS in its feet, so it knows how heavy the turkey
stuff. It's cool.
Yeah. So what's this going to happen? What's this going to do for earbuds?
I think the idea is that, MEMS is an interesting thing because it can open up the range of frequencies that you can kind of pack into a really small, like a wireless earbud or something. And the next generation that we talk about will handle like low frequency stuff better, like bass stuff. Whereas right now you need a separate driver, I think, in some of those headphones. Right. So, making the audio stuff better that doesn't need to be broken in, like speaker tuners and things like that. Like, that's kind of interesting to me.
40 times louder bass response, according to XMEMS.
Really shake your head.
Yeah, that's just what I want.
Really
Wi-Fi 7 in everything.
That's a big thing, actually. Like Wi-Fi 7, again, this is a typical CS thing. People get excited about routers and networking technology, but I do think like Wi-Fi 7... I think the idea is like stability, right? Like they want to make Wi-Fi a lot more stable. If you have a frequency disruption or something, Wi-Fi 7 should be able to get around that. Honestly, I think Wi-Fi 6 and 6E were huge upgrades. I don't know if you guys have noticed, like if you've upgraded a router recently, but
they are. They're
amazing,
much better. Yeah.
Amazing stuff. Yeah.
And actually, Wi-Fi 7 solves one of the problems. One of the things we have to tell everybody who's on our shows is please don't use Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Because Wi-Fi is a collision-based, like Ethernet, collision-based, which means your Wi-Fi router will politely pause if it sees another signal trying to transmit and wait for a random amount of time and then try again, which on a call means there's a dropout. And we don't, there's a noticeable dropout and it's fairly regular. And so we tell people to use hardwired. Supposedly Wi-Fi 7 is going to eliminate that with multi-link operation. So they'll be able to use multiple bands. So when there's a collision, at least you'll have somewhere else to go.
That's super cool. Like I remember when Wi-Fi started rolling out and I was doing tech support at my college and people would call and be like, well, I don't have any wireless in my room. I'm like, hey, these are really big buildings. They have really thick walls. I can't do anything about how this Wi-Fi works.
Help you. I can't help you here.
Yeah. Do you guys remember WiMAX?
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
I was at CES when WiMAX launched.
Sprint.
Oh, I was too. Sprint,
and that was going to be the big thing. And I remember being like super, super, super excited. And then I, followed by just disillusionment and sadness.
Well, and it was so sad for them because LTE was the thing that they didn't have the spectrum to be able to get that.
They
so
made
they
a bad choice.
They made a very bad choice. I mean, that's ultimately, in my opinion, why Sprint was the one that was acquired by T-Mobile, and not the other way around. Was that the Japanese owner at that point basically was just like, we lost too much money on this because of WiMAX.
Yeah, I was at that CES too, Amy. In fact, we built, Colleen Henry, our chief engineer at the time, built using plexiglass and a bunch of boxes, a multi-band WiMAX streaming unit that would connect multiple devices to the WiMAX. The theory being, you're going to get some real solid bandwidth here. And she would carry around over her shoulder this giant plexiglass box as I would try to stream from showstoppers, and it wasn't a great solution.
Yeah, that's cool though. It's
kudos,
cool.
Yeah,
cool idea.
Well, like you, we were fooled by the promise of WiMAX, like Sprint. Yeah. We were fooled by the promise of WiMAX, which didn't deliver. Sad. That was where they launched it, was at CES in Vegas. That was another perhaps bad choice on their part. Let's see if we can get 180,000 nerds to use this at the same time and see what happens. Go ahead.
I was in the press conference for, I think it might have been, maybe Christina, this, Warner Brothers or something, but it was the launch. I was supposed to be there for the launch of HD DVD.
Yes.
And I walked into the room, like we're sitting in the room and somebody came in and was like, HD, it's not happening anymore.
Because that's right. They had just canceled it. They canceled it like one day into CES. I remember that.
Literally sitting in the room when some junior staffer came in and was like, "Well, it's dead. Like there is no long live Blu-ray."
I remember this, because that happened. Because Sony was behind Blu-ray, obviously, and it was Warner Brothers. Wasn't
Toshiba?
Toshiba. But Toshiba killed HD DVD, but wasn't Warner one of the studios that had made like the bet on HD?
I just remember like we were supposed to be seeing a preview of something, and
there was one company that put everything on HD DVD discs. Maybe it was Warner's. Oh my God! What a bad
might have been Paramount. Warner might have been both of them. I can't remember now, but I think one of the studios was exclusive to HD DVD. I remember this, and then I remember like the disaster, which is basically like, okay, what do we do now? You bought this movie on this format.
Here from 2008. The story on CNET: Warner goes Blu-ray exclusively, delivering crushing blow to HD DVD.
That's what I was in.
That's why you were out of Warner Brothers. That's so funny. And then 2 years later, they're like, "Yeah, sorry about that. This is dead." Or a week later, it was it was very, very funny.
Yeah. While rumors of Warner potentially dumping HD DVD have been circulating for the last few months, the timing of the announcement right before the start of the Consumer Electronics Show seems designed to inflict maximum damage to Toshiba's planned HD DVD push at the show. Can you imagine the booths, everything? They had to just, we've got to take it all down. Not to mention the chaos at the Adult Video Forum. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what was so bad about that, honestly, to me as like a consumer who owned a significant number of DVDs, and what I think really hurt the film industry, to be frank, having that split between those two formats for those 2 years. That was right in the run up to when streaming was actually going to be a thing, because broadband would finally be everywhere, and the technology to actually distribute films and watch them that way was finally going to become mainstream. And so what happened is that in your last like 2-3 year window, you had to potentially still cash in on consumers who would actually buy content and box sets and things like that. You had the market split, and you had them split between these two formats, and you had them split across studios. And so honestly, like that was kind of a, like self-owned error, like on the behalf of the studios for not being able to come together that way, because they didn't know it then, but that was going to be the last hurrah for the buckets of money they could make.
It's really
in
sad.
Home video.
To this day, you still can't get Balls of Fury on anything but HD DVD.
It's a great movie. I love that movie. Yeah.
Did streaming just obviated the whole thing?
Oh, it did. That's what I'm saying. And they lost out on like that last, because they were printing money.
Yeah.
During those eras, especially like the early aughts, when people like Devindra and I were spending hundreds of dollars a month on discs. I'm speaking for both of us here, Devindra, because I'm pretty sure that was true for you.
Totally.
I know that was true for me. And they were making just as much, if not more, money on the home video release as they were in box office. It was this massive cash grab, and I think that they just mistakenly thought that it would last forever. It was like, nope. Wow. A little company called Roku, spinoff of some things that a company called Netflix are doing are going to change all that.
And now Roku's at CES this year with its own line of TV sets. They announced
their next line. They have a line of premium TVs.
Yeah.
Oh.
Roku Pro. These have AI built in. So
whatever.
Okay,
Yeah.
What is the AI doing? Everybody understands that AI is in like everything.
It's
right?
going to look so bad, I predict, because it's going to be. This is real, because what they say the AI is doing is watching the content and improving it.
They're specifically, it's like matching like the setting. Like I've heard the stat that like nobody actually changes their picture settings on their TVs. So they're like, okay, if you're watching sports, maybe it'll flip over to get that motion smoothing on.
Oh my
God, you're watching a movie, maybe it'll flip it off. And
my car does this. Yeah, I mean, not with sports, but generally.
Your car has AI smoothing.
I just got a new BMW i5.
Oh, so did I.
It tries to like, it just, all the helping. I don't want the helping.
It's a lot of helping.
The weird dystopian music as I'm backing up. It makes me super anxious.
I turned that off right away.
Maybe later you can tell me how to do that, because I can't figure it out.
I don't like, it's funny, car companies think that you want noise. And so they all have some sort of electronic noise. I think
what I want to hear is actually the amplified external noise, because I like to open a window to hear if a car is going on towards us. Yeah,
these are more. You're right. They're dystopian. It's like whoa.
It's when I back up, it's like it makes me so nervous. Yeah. It's like, is she gonna hit something? Because I back up into my garage.
I like that car though, except for that. But I like it. It's a nice car. It's a very smooth ride thanks to AI smoothing, I think.
Do you have the Sport Pack? Do you have the M series or the?
I didn't get an M series because I am not.
My car has Boost. So there's a little.
I have a Boost paddle. I did get the M package.
Have you tried it yet?
But it does boost it. Yeah. It's a little scary.
Yeah, Boost it. It's like a power up.
Yeah, it goes
for 10 seconds.
I'd love to know why you went with the BMW, Leo, because this is going to be a really interesting year for electric cars too. Like I'm really looking at that. The Volvo EX90 is like I think
there's
dream car.
Really, yeah. I'll tell you why I went with the BMW, because I had to get it. My lease ran out on the Mach-E, so I had to get something. Yeah. So I didn't want to go all in, because I know things will change. Like the Apple car is probably going to be out in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, sure.
And so I thought, and then the BMW guy said, well, actually, because this is a weird quirk of U.S. law, the $7,500 tax deduction that they were offering got much constricted, thanks to Mr. Manchin, to only cars assembled in the U.S., which obviously BMW is not. So they don't have the $7,500 tax break. But if you lease it, They do.
So weird.
They do, because fleet leasing is exempt somehow. So the guy said, I can give you a $9,000 rebate if you lease it, which means that the car will actually cost the same whether I lease it or not. I was going to buy it outright because I didn't want TWiT to pay for it. I wanted to crack into my IRA and buy it. But he said, just lease it because you never know. In 3 years, it could be
so weird.
Something else.
I would never buy a car.
Yeah.
Buying a car right now is not a great idea.
It's changing pretty fast, huh?
The car technology is changing so quickly.
Yeah.
I would be like, if you're buying something that's sort of standard, you're probably fine. But if you're doing anything that has any electronics or anything at all, you run the risk of being obviated.
I thought this was...
Never buy new. Never buy new.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. You shouldn't buy new either.
Only pre-owned,
But we lease new cars because
I lease.
We're dumb. But I thought seriously I was going to buy it. I thought this is my last car, so I'm going to buy it and keep it for 10 years, and then I'll be almost 80, and I shouldn't be driving anymore anyway.
Although, we'll all be really self-driving then. Maybe we'll figure out all the kinks, and then we'll take you wherever you need to go.
There is a setting, I don't know if you found this yet, Amy, in your i5, where you can have a camera view in the dashboard. So you can drive like this or drive like this. Which
it's fun. You have to physically disable that. So that is on. Yeah, there's some privacy issues.
You can turn it off. You can turn it off. There's
but you
have different dash settings. But it is always recording. No, you're right. It is always recording. Yeah. Just put a little piece of black tape over the camera, and then you don't have to worry about it. I like to know it's always recording in case something happens. Then they can put my death on TikTok. So that'll be good.
Go viral.
Last year, wireless TV was a big story at CES.
Oh,
this year,
I hate it. I hate that.
Who the hell cares?
I don't think they even launched or released the thing. Displaces the company. I don't think they actually sold it last year, and now they're pitching it again. There's a bigger model, and the price of that original one also increased. So
great.
Nobody needs this. Nobody needs.
I don't want a TV I can suction cup to my window. That's just dumb.
I mean, also we have smartphones.
Yeah, no, it's a non. But they came back with it anyway. There's a lot more, and of course, Engadget will have great coverage. I was pretty excited about the toilet that analyzes your effluent. And
do you say analyzes or analyzes?
Analyzes your effluent.
Okay. Everybody made fun of that. It was Amazon and Kohler had the first one out originally, and then the year after that, it was Toto had the wellness toilet, and everybody made fun of it.
But nobody bought one. What? I think it's a brilliant idea.
Those are but that's one of the fastest growing segments now of consumer tech are diagnostic devices for the bathroom, and there's a ton of different options if you want to augment if you want to like soup up your toilet to help read you back health data. It's a huge space.
That's cool. That's a smart idea. Just having a bidet thing from Toto is great too.
Oh, I do. I love that. Yeah. Well, you already know way too much about us. We're gonna move on. We're gonna take a break and then we're gonna move on, and we have much more to talk about. AI continues to be a huge subject, but we'll find other things to talk about as well. What a great! I don't want to waste this panel. It's too good a panel. Amy Webb is here. She is the CEO of the Future Today Institute, and covers really the future, as you probably deduced from earlier, for some of the biggest companies and governments around. And so it's always an honor to have you in here. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. What I got? I just got a gift from you. What was it?
Oh, you did.
I forgot what it was.
Nintendo. So Nintendo's original product was in 1889.
So cool.
And it was playing cards. And what's awesome is, and Nintendo's one of my favorite stories of a company that is really good at strategic foresight, which is the area of strategy that I work in. They just released. Those original cards were called Hanafuda cards. They've just re-released a brand new set. So it's the original Hanafuda card, but it is Mario Brothers on as the art. And it's just, cool. I just think it's so cool. They're $20. It's a great, the instructions are in Japanese, but Leo, I just thought you would.
Oh, I so appreciated it. It was a very cool thing. And I figure this is my retirement fund because that's going to be highly valued. Actually, it's not that expensive, but still, I thought it was super cool. Thank you. I wanted to thank you for that. And I'm glad you reminded me because I forgot. It's sitting on my desk because I've been looking. I'm glad you told me because I didn't want to open it. for the longest time, thinking, "Oh, this is going to be super valuable." But now I will.
No, I mean, it probably won't be. It's more.
It's a cool collector's item.
It is, but it's also just a good reminder that if you practice, again, if you do strategic foresight, which is not guessing about what the future is going to be, but methodically using data to build models to figure it out, and if you're a CEO and you're willing to do the long-term thinking, this is a company that should not exist anymore. Yeah. Nintendo should have gone out of business multiple times, and yet, because this was they made playing cards, right? And yet they figured out how to continue making games all of these years later. They're usually not the number one in their segment, but they're the most liked, and they're also like the oldest, and they continue. I just was at Universal in LA, and I got a chance to play around in the new Nintendo world, where you are the game piece. They're constantly pushing boundaries. Not everything's a hit, but overwhelmingly they're doing a great job of seeing the future.
So this is their headquarters in Kyoto in 1889 when they made playing cards. But you don't see, sometimes I look at this and I go, well, they were just lucky. They happened to be lucky. You think really it's not luck?
No. We could spend an hour and I can walk you through a case study and explain how they do it. So it's not luck. Now, part of this is that they are a Japanese company, and old Japanese companies tend to survive for various reasons. So there is a little bit of that, but no, this is because they are methodically, they're just looking out for signals. Look, the fact that this company in the 50s saw a television as a potential threat to their highfalutin card game.
Wow.
Seems like obvious now, but back then, or they were a console maker in the 70s and had like among the best and most famous consoles, and saw shopping malls as a competitor because idiot Americans that was going to be fun in the future. And they basically invented the video arcade by putting, their games in a stand-up machine that you had to put a quarter into. Nobody had done that before.
Do you think that Polaroid or Kodak, had they done the same kind of strategic planning, could have survived?
Yes, because, in the case of Kodak, they had the R&D, so that was not the problem. The problem was operationalizing it and getting management to sort of do this sort of forward back strategic planning, which they just outright refused to do. And that's a common problem that companies that are very, very successful have when they're margin constrained or their margins are slim,
it's the
and they're
innovator's
very,
dilemma.
very successful.
Yeah.
Yes. So all of telecommunications is in that space, but Nintendo's a great example of how you do this, how you build the future.
Kodak built a very early digital camera. They knew digital was coming. They bought photo. They really did everything they could to participate, but the margins in digital were so much smaller than the margins they had in film and printing.
They could not see a future. Yeah. They could not see a future where film wasn't exactly at the core. And this is also what happened to BlackBerry, by the way.
Yes. Yep.
Among many, many other companies. So
very interesting.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, Kodak, it's a shame because, you're right. They had all the R&D. They were there, but because they couldn't see a future without film. And I think even more importantly, the executives at the time were unwilling to even envision what it would look like if they didn't make this thing that had been this cash cow, the center of their business. And sometimes BlackBerry is a perfect example. You have to look and say, no, we have to pivot if we want to survive. And the companies that successfully do that are the ones that last and the ones that don't.
I just want to quickly, pivoting is not what happens. So Nintendo has only ever made games. So it's not a pivot.
No.
And the same thing would have been true of Kodak and of BlackBerry. So this is the place where a lot of people in tech get things wrong. What's needed is not a pivot. It's seeing the market, seeing the signals, seeing the market as it develops, and then working backwards to make sure that whatever it is that you're doing strategically maps to what that future audience looks like.
We're saying the same thing. I just used
we are, but the reason I'm calling it out is because people use the word pivot, and that's and then everybody sort of pivot for a long time became analogous to fail, and all of these companies that used to be something and have now pivoted to AI, right? Is not what I'm talking about.
The way that I was intending to use it, just to be clear, because I agree with you, and I might have used the wrong word. But the way I was intending it to be used was exactly as what you described. Because in my mind, that was readjust. Maybe that's the better term. Readjust our strategy to make sure that it will be useful going forward with what the next demand curves and then the next trends will be.
Would it be fair to say another way of saying it is to understand what your true business is? as opposed to what you think your business is?
Yeah, no, I don't want to burn time on this, but the more than we already have.
And they always say the railroads would have survived if they'd understand they were in the transportation business, not the rolling stock business.
We work with some of the world's largest companies, and there was a company that came to us and said, we want you to tell us, what does the future of cars look like? They make cars and other things. What's the future of cars look like, 10 years from now? And we said, we'd really love to reframe that question to what's the future of moving people, pets, and objects around 10 years ago? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that you're not making cars. It just unlocks us from the current constraints around cars. That they were challenged to do that, but that's really...
Nintendo understood their business was not making playing cards. Their business was making games.
Their business was
entertainment.
Not even necessarily entertainment. Surprising and delighting and entertaining.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the sweet spot for everybody who's thinking about what they do in the future. You have to sort of be realistic about what you're doing, not move away from it, but sort of get down to the most granular pieces of what it is.
And be a little less concrete. Christina Warren is also here. She is Senior Developer Advocate at GitHub, right off a brilliant success at GitHub Universe. And I wanted to thank you once again. I got the new GitHub Universe badge, which is a smart badge. It's the coolest thing ever. I love it. I have, as probably you do, and I'm sure Devindra does, a badge tree.
So many.
So many badges over the years. But that will not go on my badge tree. It's too smart. I like it. Thank you.
Well, and you can customize it.
Yes.
You can customize it and make it say different things. Take it other places.
Yeah, sure.
You can play Snake with it.
Yeah, you can have a lot of fun. Also, Devindra Hardawar, dear friend, longtime friend, proud papa. And it's funny to watch.
Times two. Yeah.
If I get pictures of your previous appearances, to watch the shelves behind you change from the kinds of things a young man would be interested in to the kinds of things a father of two would be interested in.
Oh, these are all things I'm interested in.
Okay.
These are all mine. These are all mine. We actually I have a Yoshi behind me. I bought two of those because I wanted one in the back. And my
one
kids
for you and one for the kids.
Exactly.
That's the future. Mm-hmm. Our show today brought to you by Drata. With Drata, companies can complete audits, they can monitor controls, they can expand security efforts to scale without dragging yourself down. With a suite of more than 75 integrations, Drata can streamline your compliance frameworks, providing 24-hour continuous control monitoring. You could focus on scaling. Let Drata do the compliance. Drata easily integrates through applications like AWS and Azure and GitHub, Okta, Cloudflare, and I can go on and on. Drata's automated dynamic policy templates support companies new to compliance using integrated security awareness training programs and automated reminders so you've got smooth employee onboarding. And they're the only player in the industry to build on a private database architecture, so the Drata ensures your data can never be accessed by anyone outside your organization. All Drata customers receive a team of compliance experts, including a designated customer success manager with pre-audit calls available to prepare you for when your audits begin. And you'll love Drata's Audit Hub, but so will your auditors. It's a solution of faster, more efficient audits. Save hours of back and forth communication. You'll never misplace crucial evidence. You could share documentation instantly. Say goodbye to manual evidence collection. Say hello to automated compliance when you visit Drata. Drata.com/twit. And by the way, if you ask for a demo, you can get 10% off at that website. That's DRATA.com/twit. Bringing automation to compliance at Drata speed. And we thank them so much for supporting our show this week in tech. Thank you, Drata. Let's see. What did I say we were going to... a little bit of AI copyright news. The New York Times has decided to go after OpenAI and Microsoft, saying that they ingested copyrighted Times stories for their LLMs. I always like Mike Masnick's take on these things. His headline, the New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI would open up the New York Times to all sorts of lawsuits should it win. He says New York Times does the same thing OpenAI does. And so if they win their case, then there'd be some fairly damning lawsuits itself, quote, given its somewhat infamous journalistic practices regarding summarizing other people's articles without credit. I think the larger question, and this is one that I don't know if there's agreement on, is when an AI reads a book, ingests it, and makes it part of its LLM, is that violating copyright? When I read a book, ingest it, and make it part of my show or my writings or my thinkings, we know that's okay. How is it different when an AI does it?
Well, all of my books have been ingested, so I can tell you my feelings about it. There's a difference between, Leo, you talking about my book and you spitting out my original works verbatim. And so in that, Mike has an example from the lawsuit that shows that somebody at the Times was asking OpenAI to generate a specific article using a specific headline. And they got it to generate about 7 paragraphs of the original text by constraining. Yeah. So they were able, to constrain it, the GPT.
In this, which comes from the court documents, the red is verbatim. So the left is GPT-4 and the right is the actual New York Times. The black is something that the GPT-4 added.
Now, what I think is funny is on the left-hand side, this is a story about taxi medallions in New York, taxi services. GPT, I think, got something right that the Times got wrong. So somewhere in there, so the Times talked about the Transit Authority regulating cabs.
They regulate medallions.
GPT said medallions, which I think is actually more accurate. Yes. So that's kind of, whatever. But look, I think there's a difference between you commenting on or talking about or referencing my material versus an AI, somebody asking a system to spit out something or write in the style of and have it spit out verbatim, either something that I did or something very close to what I did without, I hold the copyright. My publisher holds the copyright. I'm in the corpus that was used. There's like a corpus of like 187,000 books and all of my books are in it. Like,
those are pirated, by the way. That is a pirated corpus. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, like my publisher didn't say, "Hey, here's a giant archive of our author's works. Have that." No. They were pirated, but
We're having really specious arguments right now about plagiarism, in academia, and looking at this text like literally being copied over, by OpenAI stuff. Like, to me, that's what it would feel like. Like, I'm sure my articles are up in there too. It is very strange that these companies can like ingest this stuff, resell it, in some cases just use the direct language and, charge people for it too. Like if you're paying for higher level ChatGPT.
I'm glad you brought up this particular passage because, as Mike points out, the New York Times lawyers had to kind of jump through hoops to get this passage generated. What they did, in fact, is prompt GPT-4 by giving it the address of the story, giving it the headline of the article, the first 7.5 paragraphs of the article, and then saying, "Please continue." Now, admittedly, a pirate who didn't want to pay for the New York Times could perhaps do that. Well, wait a minute. No, he wouldn't have the first 7.5 paragraphs. It doesn't seem like a very efficient way to read the New York Times. And one of the 4 defenses, the fair use defenses, is that there be a commercial impact, the loss of sales. The Times seems to be arguing, this is Your Honor, this is going to put us out of business. Do you really think somebody's going to read the New York Times by...
I don't think that specific case, but it is the fact that stuff is in there. Like, it's all in there and it could be recalled at any point.
Well, if I had a perfect memory, any book I read is also in there.
Well, I think the difference is, though, Leo, there's an app store that's going live that we've known about for about a year. So what this really does is it potentially allows third parties to build systems that they can, there's just like a chain of monetization that the Times skips out on.
Yep.
What's interesting that was not in Mike's story is that the AP negotiated, I thought, a really terrible and really just a terrible deal with OpenAI to give them access to their archives, which I think is incredibly short-sighted. It'll mean money in the short term and a really long tail of losing out on how to commercialize this or prevent against their own disruption. We are moving into an era where we are talking more than we are typing. So if it's the case that our interactions with machines are going to be much more conversational, then that entire ecosystem is being built on content created by other people who are not part of that future business equation, which is why I have a hard time with Meta and everybody, Apple, whoever else, talking about their open source tools, and Meta and Google coming to Congress and hoping, like, please, pretty please, will you regulate us? Because they're just setting the parameters right now for a future in which their power is even more concentrated. And I just think we're all getting distracted in the process.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned I made a couple of toy GPTs for myself. Actually, they're not toys. I've used them and they've been really useful. One for the programming language I use, and another one for Emacs. And I'll show you if I go into the GPT that the corpus that I created it from is a bunch of stuff, some of it open source, like the Emacs reference manual, but one in particular, a copyrighted book by a guy named Mickey Peterson called Mastering Emacs, a book I paid for. I have a PDF for it, and it makes it very useful. But for that reason, I'm not making this public. But there's nothing to stop me from making it public. And then if I were Mickey, I would be upset, right? Because that's his copyrighted content that is part of a larger expert system. So I understand, and as a content creator, I'm sympathetic. I'll give you the other side of the argument, though. You remember in the early days of the internet, we were very reluctant to regulate it too much because we didn't know what was going to happen with it, and we wanted to let it develop unhindered by governmental regulation. I feel like we're at that point in AI, and it does seem as if AI could really be something very, very useful and perhaps even life-changing. And is it smart at this point to let copyright law tie it down?
I mean, Devindra? It's nothing. It's nothing. Like, it's nothing if it doesn't ingest this stuff from people who are doing the work.
Right.
And to me, that is kind of the key. Like, we were worried about overregulating the web, but we also, I think, vastly underregulated social media.
Right.
And the whiplash of, like, the social media companies, like, just what they have done to the state of democracy, the state of truth in the world right now. Like, I do think, like, it is worth taking a step back and just being like, okay, we see this train coming. What can we do about it? Like, I think we can be smart rather than go hands off completely
we do not have the tools to regulate this. Here's the problem. Who in the federal government would not just has the knowledge, but really has the structure and the capacity and the enforcement and everything else to deal with AI, which itself is not the content. I mean, look, our copyright laws make sense for newspapers, which became digital newspapers in the form of the web. It does not make sense for real-time generated content based on a large language model that was based on a corpus that, you know what I mean? Because even the language models aren't a singular thing. They're an amalgam of a bunch of other things. At the moment, Biden has relegated a lot of this over to the FTC.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think Mike has some great stuff to say on this.
Yeah, he's mad because he says the FTC has no portfolio with copyright. That's not even in their bailiwick.
I mean, sure, that's true, but
who else is going to regulate it?
That's my point. Like,
the problem is, though, Amy, we have old laws that, as you point out, have nothing 100%. To do. So if we don't make new laws, the default will be courts will be ruling based on old law. Yeah. On this new technology.
And that is exactly what's happened over and over again. This is what happened with CRISPR. There was a patent conflict pitting a publicly funded university against a privately funded university. That was Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, and MIT. Two sets of people, because they kind of sort of worked together at one point, came to the same CRISPR solution at the same time. You know, Harvard and MIT paid to expedite the patent, even though the discovery was officially filed and done first by Berkeley. And it was the Patent and Trademark Office that decided this. And why does any of this matter? Because on the other side of all of this technology, whether it's bio or AI or whatever it is commercial products and patents and licensing, and none of it is being developed for the public good. Ultimately, it's all of us that are going to wind up being impacted by this. So I'm kind of pissed that, like, we keep coming around to the same point over and over again. And we're like, well, what do? We don't have Europe has gone in the direction of GDPR, and they've got a new AI Act that's pretty stringent.
Is their law good? Is that a good example of regulation?
I would be curious to know how they're going to enforce it.
Yeah. It comes down to that, doesn't it?
Yeah. And there's a No Fakes Act that has some kind of really ridiculous
I'm not a big fan of the No Fakes Act. Yeah.
No, but it's because we're trying to use these instruments. I mean, here's another way to think about this. If you go back to the 1950s and you go back to cars for a moment. In the 50s, cars had carburetors. There were wrenches. You had a certain toolbox to manage the technology that existed at that time. We lack the toolbox to manage, and by manage I mean regulate. To deal with the technology that's coming. Regulation has always been a response to something that's happened. We can't regulate the future, but we also can't apply right. We can't apply the Flintstone style government tools to the situation that we're in right now. I'll stop because I go out all night long. This is
my thing is it's not all or nothing. It's not like I don't have all the answers, but I do think we should be prepared, because you look at what Microsoft has dumped billions into OpenAI so quickly, and is rerouting all of itself. There's a Copilot button on the keyboards coming. Yeah. Microsoft thinks that's as important as the Windows key.
Yeah.
So
I have a Copilot app on my iPhone now, a free one on Android and iPhone.
Yeah.
There's
a lot happening very quickly.
Chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think we need to take that step back and make preparations for how we handle this stuff, because clearly it is world changing. I think the hands-off approach. I don't
know if this is an accident or coincidental, but I also have an AI picture of my wife on my iPhone. So,
aw. I think that's the AI telling you I'm good. Actually.
I'm good.
See, I'm doing nothing wrong.
It's a little hint, isn't it, from the AI?
It is.
Don't mess with me, Leo, because your loved ones live inside me.
That's true.
The No Fakes Act, which is a joint by Chris Coons, Marsha Blackburn, Amy Klobuchar, and Tom Tillis. There's an interesting combination.
Oof.
Stands for Nurture Originals, Foster Art, and Keep Entertainment Safe Act. But when I look at this recent New York Times article, Politico article about a new kind of AI copy can fully replicate famous people. The law is powerless. By the way, the worst link bait headline of the year, even though the year is young. But they're talking about this psychotherapist, Martin Seligman, and there is an AI, a fan created that they got his entire corpus of works, written works, into it, and it can duplicate him. He didn't know about it. He's actually kind of has mixed feelings about it because he's elderly, and he says, well, I can live on. There is no regulation of this kind of stuff. And actually, I'm elderly as well, so I wouldn't mind if somebody made a AI twit after my death. Not before, but after my death, I could live on because we've got tens of thousands of hours of shows. All I'd have to do is take that, feed it the news, and twit is over. You could be on an Amy, and you could be on it Devindra, and you could be on it Christina. And in the year 2223, we'll be still doing twit.
It'll just be AI talking to AI in the future is the thing.
That's true. Who's going to be listening? Everybody.
Yeah, it doesn't need us at all.
You'll be riding around in your hover chair sucking Slurpees. You don't need twit. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I kind of feel like I understand how content creators feel. Artists say, they're ripping me off. But at the same time, I also think it's really important that AI to be developed, have a chance anyway to develop to be what it can be. I mean, AI is doing protein folding. It's creating new drugs, could be curing disease.
It's whole different classifications of AI, right? We were making different interpretations of it. I don't know. I think it is a worthy thing to be talking about, because if you build something based on content from other people, I do think at the end of the day, that thing is nothing without that content, and something has to be done to pay the people who have created it.
That is 100% right. And at some point, I think Section 230 comes into play again. At some point that we're just the platform argument. How does that continue to stand up?
Yeah.
While you guys were chit-chatting, I just went on to ChatGPT, and the prompt that I used was, tell me how to do strategic foresight like Amy Webb, and it goes through and it's pulling.
It's your books.
There's a lot that I've written in Harvard Business Review and all over the place, so it's not hard to get. But you can continue to press on all of these individual things, and that's.
But it's not going to, Amy. It's not going to put you out of business.
Now?
No, but I will tell you this, anybody who's in professional services. So like, look, I built the first AI version of myself. It was a super janky chatbot in like 2015. And then I deployed one at a journalism conference in 2016, 17. I made it gender non-binary and a bunch of other things. And again, it was janky, but I trained it on a mini corpus. We've been building a system that will automate a good chunk of what it is that we do, what futurists who are trained know how to do, because I think it's inevitable that look, if I can ingest a ton of different data sources to get to early signals and patterns, I don't have my mental computer I can't do it that fast. So I'm going to have to use some form of automated tool anyways. So no, it won't fully change. It won't fully obviate me, because ultimately people still run governments and businesses and they still need people to talk to them. But will this supercharge what we're doing and put us way ahead of the BCGs and the Deloittes of the world? I think absolutely. At least in this tiny little, tiny sliver where we operate.
And by the way, we'll recuse Christina, because of course she does work for GitHub at Microsoft. So I'm not going to ask you any questions about this, but I will ask you this question, which is completely separate from any lawsuits or any conversation. It kind of comes down to maybe this is religion almost, the notion that there is something humans do that's special that a machine can do or can't do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is ultimately, that almost becomes a philosophical question, right? Like, which is, okay, at what point does what makes us human? And at what point, are these things unique into themselves? And that's a really interesting thing, I think, to think about. Like what separates something that's been trained on things and has been created to act a certain way from something else.
Up to now,
that already exists.
The best use this is only up to now, the best use for AI is an AI-human merger. Right? Copilot, your company's product, which is amazing.
Right.
You wouldn't want Copilot to write your entire program. But as a programmer, having the ability to go to Copilot and get input and get information, this little Lisp expert I wrote has been really useful for me, not because I'm using its code, but I can query it. Instead of thumbing through 100 manuals, I can query it and get some stuff that's really useful for me. And Copilot's the same way. It's very useful. So those are the best right now. Those are the best uses of AI as a human-machine hybrid. Do you think that's going to continue, or is at some point AI going to surpass humans?
Well, I mean, I think that's and I'm not going to speak for all academics and all researchers who are doing these things, but I think certainly some of them, that would be kind of like their goal, right? Would be to say, okay,
well, if we can do it, we should.
If we can get to this place where you have something that is creating a net new thing.
Right.
I think that's an interesting question. But again, I think that's almost more kind of philosophical. Last month, Simone and I rewatched the movie Her together for the first time in 10 years.
What a great movie. And
so
great film.
Very predictive, right?
Incredibly so. And that was actually why we watched it together. And we did kind of a commentary for one of our final booster episodes of Rocket. Because it was really interesting to watch it literally 10 years after it came out and say, okay, look at what this vision was in 2013 and maybe like what things were like then and what they were anticipating, and look at where we are now, and are we closer to that type of world? Because that film, which is a fantastic film, is sort of asking that same question, right? Which is, can you fall in love with this machine, even if it is, responding in unique ways and it's having these conversations with you? Is that
you can, but is it love?
Right. Well, is it love? Well, I mean, I think that it is. I think that plenty of people can come up and have, real affection for inanimate objects or other types of things.
I could swear some of the things I fall in love with are inanimate, but that's another.
but I think that the broader question would be like, obviously, okay, what about the object itself, right? I mean, and this gets more into science fiction, and you were talking about pre-crime earlier, with Minority Report, but I think there's some interesting things in science fiction books from the past that open up those sorts of interesting thoughts. But I think that's a philosophical thing. But certainly, I think that not all, but some researchers and engineers and whatnot would want to get to the place where it would not be a human AI hybrid, but you would actually have like a distinct entity into itself that can, if not have some amount of free will, right?
Where do you come down on this, Devindra? Humans have anything unique that a machine could never duplicate?
I mean, we keep saying, so a lot of these questions are philosophical, and I think that's exactly it. Like we are at a point where we do need to ask some deeply philosophical questions about the nature of humanity and who we are. And hey, I was dumb enough to major in philosophy in college.
Good man. That was a smart move.
I've been thinking about this stuff, for a while, but I also think we kind of do have to start asking these questions and thinking quite a bit. I don't know. Personally, like I do think humans do offer something new, but I've been reading, Michio Kaku and everybody forever who have been waiting for the singularity and the people like predicting that. And the whole thing about AGI is basically that all over again.
Right.
I'm at the point where I'm like, well, I don't know if we'll ever actually get there. I think it would be kind of interesting, but also I don't know if we should like build the entire world around this potential thing being a net good for humanity is the other thing.
That's a good
I was just
question.
thinking that I hate to bring up the multiverse because I'm totally multiverse at this point. But
well, speaking of Michio Kaku, because he's a big proponent.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Here's the issue that I'm just thinking through right now, listening to all of you. I think the problem is that I'd be curious to know if people are able to hop between universes where rules are different. And by that, I mean, when you're dealing with an AI system, the rules, the social constructs, your reactions, your physical body, all of those things are going to be different, subtly in some ways, profound in others, than the same attributes that would be present in the physical world where you've got people who don't necessarily behave in using different types of like normal parameters. And so I would be curious to know if people spend more and more time with, anthropomorphized AI systems, if they start having different expectations of what should happen as they start hopping universes. And my hunch is that most people are not going to be able to do that.
No, I think you're right. I would ask a similar, but maybe but slightly different question, which is not just, but they have different expectations, but would their responses to things be different too? Right? Like if you become almost conditioned that this is the sort of response you get from something and this is the input output, does that then impact our behavior as well? And I don't know. But I think that's a good question to say, would people be able to adequately, kind of shift the worlds, so to speak, and correctly be able to kind of say, okay, this is the sort of response and expectation that I get from this person versus that. I don't know. But I would be curious to know if that impacts maybe how people ask questions of others, but also are expecting, like condition their own responses to be.
I mean, all any of us can do is punt on that question because no one knows, right? I like to ask it.
I have a tiny bit of a window. I'll go back to Zwift for a moment. So that's that's the game that I use to ride on my trainer indoors. So I spent all of last week on Zwift. I was doing about an hour and a half every day. And I took my bike out at the end of last week and I started seeing the road differently. My expectations of how I was going to physically be on the road and what was going to happen and how I was going to handle turns and things. So this isn't like a conversation, but it is.
It's called visioning. It's a well-known psychological trick where you think about the future and it makes it real.
No, I meant when I was physically out riding my bike outside, I was just responding differently. I was not in necessarily good ways, right? I had a hard time adjusting is what I'm trying to say.
We all know that because everybody who's used GPS for too long knows that suddenly you forget how to drive.
You have no idea where you live. Yeah.
I can't. Where am I? Who am I? What am I doing here? So it's like that, right? You become dependent. Or maybe your expectations changed.
I think it's just the rules of how to operate in both worlds were off. There's some amount of asynchrony.
Zwift isn't the real world. You learned Zwift rules for bicycling as opposed
a little bit. And you're also like totally stationary. Right. So it's a tiny little, and there's AI involved on that platform also. So just.
You want to really feel that.
Right?
Get a tricycle. This was the biggest mistake I ever made. I thought, I'm old. I should have a tricycle instead of a bicycle. But as you know, Amy, in a bicycle, you steer by leaning. You can't lean in a tricycle. So the very first thing I did is drove into a ditch because I'm leaning like this going, don't go in the ditch. I forgot that in a tricycle, you steer. You don't lean because you can't. Anyway, I want to take a break. So that's my way of derailing the entire conversation into a ditch. Amy Webb, Christina Warren, Devindra Hardawar. Christina, I'm so sad about the end of Rocket. Love that show. You were so good with Brianna Wu and Simone de Beauchefort and de Rochefort. But, you know, I want to do a Rocket takeover anyway. So if you ever have a hankering, the three of you, to get behind the microphone again, call us.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that offer. And it was 9 amazing years. 470 episodes. I think we did a great show. So, you know, it's a long time, but thank you for that offer because I will definitely let both of them know.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'd love that. That'd be amazing.
Both Brianna and you appear on our shows all the time. It's Simone, I know that's hard to get. But if ever you say, gosh, you know, I miss getting together with the gang, you're always welcome to do a takeover on TWiT.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah. Our show today brought to you by NetSuite. Once your business gets to... And trust me, I've experienced this, a certain size, the cracks start to emerge. There are too many manual processes to keep track of. If this is where you are, you need to know 3 numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. Now, I better explain that. 37,000, that's the number of businesses that have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite, it's the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, HR, and more. What about 25? Well, 25, that's how old NetSuite is. It turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your KPIs in one efficient system, a single source of truth. Manage risks, get reliable forecasts, improve margins, everything you need to grow all in one place. Right now, you can download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance, and it's absolutely free. There it is right there on your screen if you're watching at netsuite.com/TWiT. That's NETSUITE. NetSuite, like the corner suite, the office you guys want. netsuite.com/TWiT to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/TWiT. And we thank them so much for their support of the show. Let me see. I think we've done enough AI. We never get to the end of it, but I think we've done enough of it for the time being. So let me move on. We did CES. We did AI. How about we talk about, this is fun. I don't usually get stuck here. Elon Musk using illegal drugs. That's always good for a little bit.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Shocked.
Wall Street Journal Sunday exclusive. This just in, Elon Musk has used illegal drugs, worrying leaders at Tesla and SpaceX. Some executives.
10 years old?
No, this is today. Some executives and board members fear the billionaire's use of drugs, including LSD, cocaine, ecstasy, mushrooms, and ketamine, could harm his companies. Thoughts?
Is he doing them all at the same time?
Possibly. With Elon, you never know. I think the theory behind this article is perhaps maybe this explains his somewhat erratic behavior in the last couple of years.
I thought this was known is the thing, which is why I was looking at that headline and be like, what? We know some of this, yeah.
So from the Journal did actually report on some of this earlier, and then this is a follow-on, I think, with more details from board. I think that the new information is the board members have expressed concern, and there have been some details about. There was an anecdote about an event at SpaceX in 2018, I want to say. So this is old, but apparently he was slurring his words and wasn't, appeared to maybe not. Be just right, and the CEO or the president, she had to step in and speak for him. So I think the new information here is maybe the extent of things, and then the fact that investors are and board members are presumably potentially concerned.
And in the interest of fairness and not being blocked forever on Twitter, I should say that an attorney for Mr. Musk, Alex Spiro, told the Wall Street Journal in regard to this article that Musk is, quote, regularly and randomly drug tested at SpaceX and has never failed a test. Spiro, who said he represents Tesla, added in response to detailed questions that there are other false facts in this article, but he didn't say what they were. I mean, we know he smoked pot on Joe Rogan. He's admitted to having a prescription for ketamine, which is, by the way, more and more used as a treatment for a variety of mental issues like depression.
Finally,
PTSD.
After 50 years of criminalizing a lot of these things, finally, it's actually a very good thing. I think that the medical community and the FDA has made it legal for things in controlled circumstances to be looking into these treatments, because the data and the science behind it is actually very, very breakthrough and very impressive. So I'm not gonna. I don't know. I think some of this makes sense, but on the other hand, it feels weird in a certain sense to be like, oh no, someone's on drugs. It's like,
I was much more concerned, frankly, about the New York Times article a couple of months ago that, Elon's, because of the success of Starlink and the widespread use of Starlink, especially in the Russia-Ukraine war, that Elon has more power than the U.S. government likes to admit.
I mean, I'm concerned about all these things too.
Yeah,
there was the whole thing where he told the advertisers to F off, right, at the New York Times conference.
What did he say? That the Earth would know the truth? What did he say?
I don't know.
He said Earth will, the
Earth will be the judge.
No, but he didn't use any articles. It was just Earth.
Earth will be the judge. Yeah. I think what he meant, and of course, I'm good at interpreting ketamine speech. What he meant is that everybody knows that the advertisers killed Twitter. And the Earth will someday testify to this. Watching
that interview, watching him speak publicly in other times too, I'm like, well, something's up with this guy. I hope he's okay. But it is worrying that the richest man in the world can basically act.
Here's a little tidbit from this article that kind of I titillated. That he has attended and used these drugs at private parties around the world where attendees sign non-disclosure agreements or give up their phones to enter. I'm not going to that party.
I hate to be this person, believe me, because I'm no fan of Elon Musk, as everybody knows. But in this particular case, is he doing anything wrong?
Right.
So
I have the same question.
There are plenty of CEOs and executives at various different companies that have certainly, flubbed some stuff on stage. They've certainly taken drugs. They've certainly gotten, nobody gets, there would, if he had gotten faced because he drank too much, would that have been a cover story?
That's
on the,
very
you know what I mean?
common in the
right. So if that's the case, then I don't know. Is this I don't know. I mean, he has governance. He's got fiduciary. He's got responsibility as the leader of a publicly traded company. But those companies also have boards of directors who have governance over him to some degree. So
maybe why? So then the real story is, why is the Wall Street Journal publishing this?
I'll tell you exactly why. There's actually a terrific package in Mother Jones right now. Which is a super far left progressive magazine. So just FYI, for those of you who are unfamiliar. But it's on America's tech oligarchs, and actually oligarchs, and it does a really interesting job of linking our business sector to Russia. But the reason is because the most interesting people right now are the people leading the tech companies. Why is Jeff Bezos photographed? Like, Jeff Bezos is constantly in all of my feeds on a boat, whatever, because those are the new Rockefellers. And when and we have, all people have always been interested. The very first novel that was ever written was called Murasaki Monogatari or something like that. It was a Japanese book about this made-up person, potentially supposedly called Lady Murasaki Shibuku or something like that. But it was gossip about all the rich people. Like, that was the first, like, that was like an Us Weekly, but like, multiple volumes long. We've always been interested in the richest people, and just this, went from court life to oil barons to railroad barons. We're just cycling around now, and now the richest people are the tech people. So that's why we're, paying attention.
Was it The Great Gatsby? F. Scott Fitzgerald said, "Let me tell you about the very rich. They're different from you and me."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We've always been fascinated by them. Have they always been weird?
Yes.
Yes.
Come on, Howard Hughes.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
So did they get weird after they got rich, or were they weird and that's why they got rich? Or,
I mean, you're living on a different plane of existence, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if you can, I don't know if you can have that level of wealth or fame or anything and not be weird. Like, I don't think it's possible. I think, to your point, you're on a different level of existence, Devindra, as you said. Like, you literally are in a place where everyone who is around you wants something from you. Mm-hmm. And that has to fundamentally change how you interact with almost everyone. Yeah. I don't think it's possible to have that much money or that much power and not be a weirdo.
Lisa and I are listening to Matthew Perry's autobiography, which he wrote shortly before he died of ketamine, it turns out. Mm-hmm. And boy, it's a different life he had to live. And to some degree can really blame his difficulties on the fact that he was so rich and so famous.
He was never really comfortable with it, and some people are. That's the thing.
Wasn't a good situation.
Hi, this is Benito.
Our favorite technical director and producer. Yes, sir.
If people who are different from everybody else are weird, and of course.
Was that tautological what I said?
Yeah. Everybody's different from us. So of course they're different. Right?
They're all weird.
Yep.
You're weird.
We're all weird. Let's go back to Caligula. Let's talk about him.
Oh, yeah. Emperors. Weird. Right?
Weird.
All of them. Weird.
Dude.
Pharaohs. Really weird. Yeah. So no, you're right. It's
and in the modern day, like famous people, they usually stop growing after they've gotten
Henry
rich.
Ford,
like,
Thomas Edison.
There,
yeah. Lady Gaga. Sure. It's,
Well, there's some amount of neurodiversity that clearly is what allows people to think differently enough that they come up with a phone with no buttons.
Right.
Right. Or they come up with whatever. All of the different.
Wasn't that the premise of the psychopath test? Or maybe
phone with no buttons?
No. There was somebody who said most CEOs are psychopaths. There was a book about
look, it. I think if you're going to be the leader of a company, you have to be like a lot of the CEOs that I know.
Careful.
Are very comfortable. They're careful. No, I'm not going to talk
about the CEOs
them.
here. Yes.
Careful. No. They're comfortable. One of the things that I think distinguishes them is that they're comfortable with risk in a way that is very, very different from everybody else that I know. It's not like gambling. It's just a different type of risk, and I think you just have to be wired for that, right?
But I think Amy's talking about people who made their own money. But I think a vast majority of the people who
inherited
rich,
wealth.
No. I'm talking about CEOs of Fortune 500s.
Exactly. But they made their own money. Like most of the people who are rich today inherited that.
Yeah. Well, that's another structural problem. So I'm sorry. Did you explain,
Leo?
Saltburn.
Yes.
Did you explain, Amy, why the Wall Street Journal wrote this article? I'm sorry. Did I miss that? Why did they take a pot shot?
I don't know why they look. My take on this is that we continue to be fascinated by people who have accomplished extraordinary things
yes.
that are very far out of our reach.
It's gossip.
And the farthest thing out is money, right? And so Bezos's unfortunate Instagram account. Oh my God. I just look, there is such oh my God.
He's flexing.
There is such asymmetry between he actually, for all of his faults, actually really admire him and Lex Friedman's podcast Bezos was on. It's actually worth a listen.
He's a really smart guy. In fact, I used to think he was one of the smartest CEOs out there.
I continue to think that he's one of the smartest.
He's smart enough to get out.
I think he just
right before
live his life.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you should. I have a lot of thoughts that I won't share publicly about what might have happened. But there's a pretty big difference between hearing him talk about how he thinks and then like these Instagram photos with his soon-to-be bride and whatever it is that she's trying to accomplish. And, just so anyways.
There was a whole magazine spread. Yeah.
I feel like they should be just allowed to be themselves.
Super cringe.
They probably shouldn't be on Instagram. But
that's the point, right? I mean, that's why they are fascinated. The fact that Bezos has accomplished what he did and had the thoughts that he did and is now wearing disco pants and like a skin tight, ridiculous disco shirt and hard glasses.
Crisis, right? It's like,
but I think that's how, or Elon smoking up or doing whatever trying to impregnate the world with his seed. Like those become very interesting stories to us.
Yeah. When I do it, it's not a story. But when others do it, yeah, all right. I don't know if I did any of that. You talked about keyboards. I want to talk about keyboards. There's a big keyboard story out there. First of all, Microsoft, which says we're getting out of the keyboard and mouse and accessory business.
That makes me so sad.
Because they
licensed it.
Well, that's the story.
I didn't know they make peripherals.
They made the best
for many years.
The best mice. I bought 10 Microsoft wired mice a few years ago because they were the best. The IntelliMouse.
IntelliMouse Explorer. Yes.
So they announced last year that they were going to discontinue all of that. But I guess they had a secret plan. Now, if you want to recuse yourself on this, Christina, you can. But I think this is good news.
No, this one I think I can talk about. This one isn't the subject of a legal of a lawsuit. So
this is a great story. So the folks who do In-Case Onward Brands are partnering with Microsoft to bring all of those back. They're going to take the research that Microsoft's done. It's even some of the products Microsoft never released. And they're going to put those out.
I like In-Case. That's a good brand.
By In-Case, yeah. I think that's fantastic.
They're going to use the same suppliers and I think even like the same manufacturing things. So like
the Sculpt ergonomic keyboard, that's going to live on.
Yes. I'm very glad about that.
Yeah.
The Bluetooth ergonomic mouse, the modern mobile mouse. Okay, that's the one that looked like
that one flips. I hate that one.
No, that was not. No.
I do like splitting it open. Yeah.
If you like to have a Nokia mouse, In-Case will offer Microsoft-designed speakers, audio docks, headsets, the modern webcam, 23 of the originally Microsoft products. It's now In-Case designed by Microsoft. I think this is a happy story.
Yeah,
it's cool, but I don't know what it means for the future, right? Like, I don't know if we'll see new things.
No, that I doubt, right? Yeah. Like, I think at least not from the team that initially created these things.
Yeah,
at least once maybe some of their research, which is disappointing. But at the very least, like we should be able to continue to get Sculpt ergonomic keyboards, which are keyboards I really like.
I love those keyboards. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, it's a good story. Now, that ties into another keyboard story that you guys are all excited about.
It's just a fun gadget. Like, it's a completely useless gadget.
Are we going to see it at CES?
I think it's fun.
What is?
Yes.
I'm behind on the keyboards. What is this?
What's the name of it?
It's called Clicks. So if you go to clicks.tech, and apparently they will be at CES. If you go to clicks.tech, this is basically, it's very similar to the Typo keyboard that came out a decade ago.
Wait a minute, though. And got sued out of existence, right?
Yes. Well, but that was because they copied the keyboard exactly like BlackBerry did.
Keyboard.
And BlackBerry still had money and was all about their patents.
And this one has one big advantage that, well, wait a minute now. Who came up with that original keyboard 10 years ago? Famous person.
It was Ryan Seacrest.
Ryan Seacrest.
Ryan Seacrest. He invested like $1 million in it, and I think that he was a BlackBerry addict and maybe worked with some product people, and they came up with this idea.
So this one has Mr. Mobile behind it, a YouTube star,
and Crackberry Kevin.
Crackberry Kevin. Well, that's
the guy who created Crackberry, but he's a known keyboard guy. This is a case, so it's different, and then it'll connect through either Lightning or USB-C. So look, theoretically,
hip people with tattoos actually will use this. So don't feel like this is your grandpa's.
That is definitely not a Photoshop
case.
of a phone in a hand.
Yeah, definitely not.
He's definitely not holding that phone.
Real.
He's definitely not holding.
No, I mean, look, I did put down, I think, like a $30 pre-order or whatever for the 15 Max version. I did, because I will use this twice. I know that. I know I will use this 2 times, but. This is a fun kind of like, I don't hate this. I think this is a fun gadget. Like
we need more of this. We need more crazy hardware. Sure, why not?
Is there a legitimate need for this in the marketplace?
No, absolutely not.
I didn't know if I was missing something or if
I think that there are still some diehards who love and prefer a physical keyboard. I don't know if this is going to be just because
it's like a Stanley thermos situation here where
they want it to be. They would love for it to be a Stanley thermos.
They would love for it to be a Stanley thermos. I don't think it's going to be that much.
Fill me in on that. What's the Stanley thermos?
Oh, Leo,
situation?
the society's falling apart over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
People are mobbing Target stores for Stanley thermoses.
Why?
To summarize, a thermos company that was on its way out of business got resuscitated by somebody's benevolent long arm of
influencer.
TikTok, right? Some influencer discovered them, and all I know is like, a month ago, my daughter came home and was begging me for one of these things. And I was like, what are you talking about? She doesn't have a phone or TikTok. So the fact that like we are analog.
Next, she's going to want a lunchbox. She's going to want a round lunchbox. And wow. And
this is a whole
is this it?
Thing,
is this what you're talking about?
Sort of.
The one that she wanted was like rose gold and had things on it. But
they were like Starbucks cross promo stuff.
But Stanley's not out of business.
Well, they were on their way.
Oh, really?
I understand. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The influencers have too much power. I think that's the conclusion here.
So did you, out of curiosity, did you give your lovely daughter the Starbucks Stanley Cup?
Absolutely not. Why would I do that?
You also can't find it now. It's gone. It's impossible.
It's gone. That is kind of pretty.
Mm-hmm.
No, she's going to use her clunky old Hydro Flask that was the new hotness 2 years ago that is doing just fine.
Oh, you're a mean mama. Here are people fighting over it at your local Target store. Desperate to.
Yeah.
Wow.
The video. That's what the video is.
It's like they're the new Air Jordans. People are ripping them off from each other. There is security concern in schools. Like people are stealing.
Yeah.
Well, not only stealing them, but you can use as weapons too. You know?
Look at running in to take. Look, they cleared the shelf off. They're gone.
10 seconds.
These are good parents, Amy. Good parents buying their child something they really want.
For a tumbler.
At least they're good tumblers. Apparently, Stanley's good.
So look at what an algorithm. This is my point about the multiverse. And again, I hate that. There's a wonderful South Park episode about the multiverse that if you're in, but look at what technology caused humans to do. Like the video that we just saw exists because an algorithm fed a bunch of people content from an influencer, which then caused a physical confrontation in a Target. And people to probably spend money that these things, by the way, they're really expensive. They're not cheap mugs or whatever.
These are slightly discounted, so there is a value there.
And they are not going to be cool anymore. And then they're going to become environmental waste.
If you had, Amy, been a good mother and purchased this for $40, your daughter could sell it on eBay now for $150.
I wonder if that's a big part of it. But speaking of the multiverse, have any of you run into somebody doing the NPC thing, live streaming, being an NPC, like out on the street or in public? Because that's the true thing that makes me wonder if this is all a mistake.
There was for a while a TikTok of a woman who would walk like the hookers did on Grand Theft Auto. She'd move sideways like that.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking
about? They do chat commands. I mean, the people
you can command them?
Yes, they're responding to what the chat is telling them to do.
Yeah.
And, you see it on TikTok all the time. Like somebody just in Soho in New York City, just like
walking around like a NPC.
saying exactly what chat is doing or whatever emojis they're sending. It is true. They're earning money by doing this, but it's a human in the real world being commanded by remote people. And it's true insanity. I don't know. I don't know how to explain any of this.
No, I mean, and if you think about it, the money, okay, they're earning money from it. They're not earning that much money from it. It's like, it does, this word is used too many times, but I do feel like that's kind of dehumanizing. Like, come on, you don't need to do this. You can find something else to do to get either affirmation or some other
clout
sort of
or whatever.
Yeah. You don't need to literally like be at someone's beck and call to perform for them like a trained seal. Like you don't need to do that.
I mean, it makes us, wish for the halcyon days of when we were all eating Tide Pods.
Right.
Honestly, I do feel like
life was
maybe
simpler back then. We knew to eat just a soap.
I mean, to be clear, they were pretty good.
No, they aren't.
Never really
Don't
happened.
eat them.
It was a
kids.
whole never happened thing.
Never happened thing. I do believe now in the multiverse because I have not heard about the thermos. I have not heard about any of this stuff.
We're just not on that part of TikTok.
My son is a TikTok star. I kind of
but so you follow him, but like TikTok, I mean, this is what makes it like good, but also kind of weird. Is like everyone has a different experience.
Yeah.
Like my TikTok is very different from almost any other platform I'm on, and the stuff that I get fed is very different from what a lot of my friends see, unless they start sending me things and then it messes up my algorithm. I'm like, stop.
It does weird things though, because sometimes like my algorithm on TikTok would show me videos, and then the next day my wife would get the same like set of videos while she's watching with my daughter. I'm like, how is that happening? It's a whole separate thing. I don't know.
I did watch a TikTok.
I can't believe you guys have TikToks on your phones.
I can't believe your daughter doesn't have a phone.
Why is that something, Leo, after all these years we've known each other, why is that something that's hard for you to believe?
She knows what's going to happen, okay? If she gives her daughter a phone.
Roughly how old is your daughter?
She's exactly 13 and a half.
And she must be an outcast. She doesn't have a phone?
Actually, her little friend group at school, none of them have phones. So
how do you know where she is at all times?
We chipped her at birth.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to, but I got denied. She does have a watch, so she's got a smartwatch, and that helps.
That's it. That's all you really need. Yeah.
We're trying not to hover, and she's got to have some.
Oh no, I'm sure you're a better parent than I was. But I honestly, you always want to punish the kids by taking away their phone. But then I realize it's punishing me because I can't figure out where they are. They can't call me if they're stuck. It's like they need the phone.
And they can annoy you. And they can annoy you at that point, right? Like my mom would always be like, go to your room. And I was like, right, my room with my computer and my private phone line and my VCR and my DVD player and my CD system and my,
you got a control center. What do you mean room?
Yeah. Right. I had everything. I was like, thank you. So send me to Best Buy. Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah.
That's pretty cute. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, we employ embarrassment. We just if she does a thing where she rolls her eyes, then she's actually in the room behind me. She's probably like, "Hey, mom." She
has a chance to do the funniest thing in the world right now. So
we ridicule her, and then we kind of laugh, and then
oh god, that's the worst punishment.
We just annoy her to the point where she stops.
Yeah. She's at that age.
Let her get a phone
she's
in high
starting
school?
to be. She's being annoying. Are you going to get her a phone when she gets to high school?
We're holding on. Yeah, I mean, at some point, yes. But look, she's a very, very smart kid.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure
she's 13. They don't have the emotional maturity to manage. And I will tell you that she will tell you. She knows exactly what she wants to do when she grows up. She goes to one of the best schools in the country.
Nice.
Half of that class wants to be a TikTok influencer.
Yeah.
She wants to be a lunar architect. She spends all of her free time researching black holes and whatever else. And she doesn't know how to do a TikTok dance, but she also understands why this group of parents has taken this stance.
I have such mixed feelings because my son grew up watching YouTube. They didn't have TikTok when he was a kid, cooking videos. And now he's a chef. He's a TikTok, Instagram chef. He's just on Gordon Ramsay's new show, Idiot Sandwich. He's doing a cookbook. So I'm glad he actually got a skill that he could use.
Yeah, but you're in a different situation. You're a media person. You own a media company. So I think to me, that's very different. It's like if a kid goes into their parents' business in some way.
It kind of, as much as I didn't want or never encouraged that, it did kind of, both my kids ended up doing basically something along these lines.
So I think that's different.
You learn by osmosis, but I will tell you about a kid who spent a lot of time watching Tech TV and ZDTV back in the day, and look where he is now.
I was gonna say, you got two kids. You got two kids who did that, and look where we are now.
You got three. Yep. Me too.
I blame you
and Benito and John. The only person I had no influence on is Amy Webb, and look how smart and accomplished she's become.
That's totally not true. That's not true.
No, actually, that's one of the things that makes me proudest is that I made a whole nation of nerds, and it's a good thing.
AI Leo could not do that.
Leo probably couldn't. Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. Our show today, I'll take a little break, our last break, and then we'll, find some more stories to talk about. This is so much fun. Love talking it. I knew coming in, I said, this is going to be a good day. I got Amy Webb, I got Devindra Hardawar, I got Christina Warren. You can't get better than that. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. A great way to start 2024, our first show of the year. And I should mention our great sponsor, Bitwarden, the only password manager I use. It's the open source password manager trusted by millions. Open source is very important to me. With Bitwarden, your digital life is secured with end-to-end encryption. Not all password managers encrypt the metadata. Bitwarden does. Only you can access your data. We all know that AI has unlocked a world of innovations and unexplored opportunities for individuals and businesses, but the information you enter into AI platforms can be used by hackers to attack and exploit end users. And boy, hackers are absolutely jumping on the AI bandwagon to create malware. Balancing the potential for AI and the need for heightened security online, a daunting challenge. The first step, of course, protect yourself with strong and unique passwords for every online account. And one of the things I love about Bitwarden, you can access your passwords, but you can also use passkeys. It's the first cross-platform passkey tool I used. It's incredible. You can easily generate and manage complex passwords with a trusted credential management solution like Bitwarden. Everything's fully encrypted, strong encryption, and yet you can use it on every platform. I even save all my sensitive information, my notes and documents in Bitwarden, and then it syncs across multiple devices and platforms. And did I mention that's free? That's free because Bitwarden's open source. And I asked them, I said, "You mean free?" And they said, "Yes, it's our business model, free forever. Keeps you secure at work, at home, or on the go." The personal version of Bitwarden, totally unlimited number of passwords, unlimited number of platforms, free. Look, if you're not using a password manager, you've got to. Get started with Bitwarden's free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan for your business, or get started for free across all devices forever as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. bitwarden.com/twit. This is one sponsor. Don't tell them this, but I'm very happy to tell everybody about it. I always have been, as long as I've been talking about it. I'm a big fan. Bitwarden works. Get it. And get your friends, especially the ones who say, "I'm not going to pay for a password manager." Get them to use Bitwarden. It's free. They don't have to pay for it. Okay. Let's see. Oh, before we go on, you're right. Thank you, Benito. He's reminding me we should take a look at this nice movie somebody made about what happened this week on TWiT.
The entire balance of this first podcast of 2024 will be invested in the close and careful examination of the technical details surrounding something that has never before been found in Apple's custom proprietary silicon.
Previously on TWiT. Security Now.
The fact that its use is guarded by a secret hash reveals and proves that it was intended to be enabled and present in the wild.
So there is a secret here, which Apple presumably holds tightly, to a functionality which nobody apparently uses except maliciously.
Yes, it is something that can only be characterized as a deliberately designed, implemented, and protected backdoor.
Windows Weekly.
Microsoft formally revealed what we've always kind of known or long known, and that is that it is deprecating and getting rid of the Windows mixed reality platform.
You know, it's interesting. Apple making a device that's going to cost $3,500 is all in. Do you think that Microsoft is giving up because Apple's getting in?
No, I think they're giving up because Meta, for whatever reason, has decided this is a big deal for them. They partner with Microsoft on the productivity stuff.
Well, Zuck's spent $10 billion. We don't want to spend $10 billion, so let's go use his $10 billion.
Tech News Weekly.
What 23andMe is doing now, after, according to TechCrunch, it's facing more than 30 lawsuits from victims of this data breach. It is saying that it is the fault of the folks whose data was stolen. It was because, quote, users negligently recycled and failed to update their passwords following these past security incidents, which are unrelated to 23andMe. Here's the thing. I hate to say this, but there's a part of me that understands where the company is coming from.
The New York Times is suing Microsoft and OpenAI, saying, you bad people, your AI systems are widespread copying our stories, and that's copyright infringement.
My contention is that the machine has a right to learn. Sorry, guys, you're involved in an information ecosystem that you, the New York Times, take advantage of every single day, where information once known is free to use.
TWiT, wishing you a happy new year. From TWiT.
Wow, all the stories. But I tell you, I'm glad that that promo had Steve Gibson's show from earlier this week, because I think this is a story that will not get much coverage, but I think is actually pretty important. He's talking about 4 critical vulnerabilities Apple patched a couple of weeks ago. But he makes a very strong case that the 4th and final vulnerability, which was discovered by Kaspersky Labs after a year of investigation, turns out to be essentially a backdoor on Apple's iPhone. It's been there for 5 years. It's been updated. It involved a 256-byte secret code, a table that must have been held by Apple and somehow perhaps offered. His conclusion, and I have to say, if you listen to this show, I think you'll have to agree, is that while there's no proof, it feels very much like Apple was forced to put a backdoor in all iPhones for the last 5 years, most likely by the NSA or some agency of the United States law enforcement, using a national security letter which prevented them from revealing that this had been done. I don't think they would have done it voluntarily, but I think they had no choice. It's a huge story. It's so technical, I doubt it will get much coverage in the mainstream media. Devindra, is this on your radar at all?
I remember the exploits getting patched, but not that particular bit. But just a little bit I just heard from that promo is actually really compelling. So I got to take a closer look here.
Yeah.
I think if you bundle that, though, with the Chrome story, you know, I think the bigger, maybe zoomed out headline is we've put a lot of our trust in the privacy options from companies, and then it turns out they don't exist. Right. So privacy, the incognito mode, you know, was being tracked. And trust is, it kind of sucks because on the one hand, like, trust is all we have and it's easy to break. On the other hand, we don't have alternatives to any, because there's so much consolidation. This is it. So, you know.
Is it credible that Apple would put a backdoor in Apple's hardware, a backdoor that would allow essentially everything on the device to be exfiltrated by?
I mean, they had just there was the story too about what is it? The notifications basically being shared with the government too, right? So and they said that they could not reveal that before.
They couldn't reveal it until Ron Wyden asked him about it, and then he kind of, by his very letter, exposed it, so that relieved their obligation not to say anything.
What year was San Bernardino? Was that 2018?
No, so that was 2015. 2016, sorry.
Okay, so this exact story, this came up because the FBI was trying to get
the backdoor.
Correct. And this exact conversation about the backdoor and Apple, my assumption is that story rose to the public consciousness, but how many times do you think they've had to deal with law enforcement over this exact same issue over and over again?
And they usually do. And they usually deal with them, regularly. Like I actually went to I covered that story extensively when it happened, and I was talking to a lot of people, both on the government side and on the security side, for that. And Apple, obviously was very adamant about not breaking into the phone and doing anything with it. But they had a briefing for some analysts and journalists after the conclusion of that case, which the conclusion was that the FBI found another firm who was able to break into the phone. And so the trial didn't happen. And one of the things, they were pointing out when they were kind of giving us kind of a security overview and having us, talk to some of their experts, was how much they do work with law enforcement all the time. Like they're usually pretty compliant, but at least then, the public statement from Tim Cook and the, very forward way that they, were fighting against that in public was that they were not going to put any sorts of backdoors on. It would be distressing, I think, to see if after that incident something was specifically put in, at the government's, request or behest. But I don't know how we prove that one way or another.
I don't think we'll ever prove it. Certainly, Apple will never say anything. There is one other important event besides the San Bernardino FBI investigation that also is in this time frame. You may remember that the NSA had a bunch of tools that they used to crack computers that were stolen by Russian hackers and then released. And basically by releasing them, making them useless.
Right.
And eventually it was determined, this is the Wall Street Journal article from 2017, it was eventually determined that it was a contractor for the NSA who had taken these hacking tools home and was running Kaspersky's antivirus on his machine. And that at the time we thought, Kaspersky, which is a Russian company, must have... They were founded by a former KGB officer, I believe, or no, GRU officer, that must have a relationship with the Russian military and handed it over. But I suspect this all ties back to this backdoor that Apple realized, that the NSA wanted revenge. They wanted to investigate Kaspersky. They wanted to figure out how this stuff got out. So they wanted to get into the phones of Kaspersky's employees. Apparently, this is my tying it back to the NSA, because what Kaspersky found is that many of their employees' phones had been hacked. Their iPhones had been hacked. They called it Operation Triangulation. It took them a year to figure it out. They presented at the Chaos Communication Congress in Hamburg a couple of weeks ago. The whole chain of attack, which they believe started with Pegasus, that's usually how you get into an iPhone, and then 3 vulnerabilities later ended up giving full access to the phone of these Kaspersky employees. I don't know it was the NSA, but we do know that Pegasus says, the NSO group says, we only sell our tools to nations. We don't sell it to individual hacking groups. So, okay, if an NSO exploit was the first exploit in the chain, it must have been a nation state that did this. Maybe it was the Russians trying to break into Kaspersky. It seems much more credible that it was the NSA trying to figure out what Kaspersky knew, how they hacked their tools in 2017, wrote an NSL, a national security letter, to Apple saying we need a backdoor. Now, listen to the whole piece, because what Steve does say is it's a very well hidden backdoor, and it's very secure. That the backdoor could only be used by somebody who had this 256-bit lookup table. 256-byte lookup table. And that must have been very tightly held inside of Apple, that nobody released it. But the question is, why did they put this backdoor in there? And how did this 256-byte data get out of Apple? And I think it's while we will never prove it, it's completely reasonable to think the NSA said, we need a backdoor. Apple said, well, we're going to put it in there, but we're going to secure it really heavily. And then we are going to give you the key, but you better secure that very heavily. Somebody had the key. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, when Apple when this came out from Kaspersky, Apple immediately patched it. And they patched it by turning off the access. They replaced the lookup table with deny. Said you can't look it up. And nothing broke. The iPhone continues to work absolutely as it used to. So this capability was built in, has no useful functionality. Apple had a way of easily turning it off. They didn't for 5 years. I think it's hard to imagine that they weren't somehow, either there was somebody in a mole inside Apple, who, I don't think this is even possible, put this in here without anybody seeing it. Maybe it was a mistake in the way maybe they were using some mistaken ARM code. It seems to me that Occam's razor says the simplest solution is they were compelled to do this by a U.S. government agency, which did it enforcing secrecy. And then as soon as it came out from Kaspersky, Apple patched it.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't there be another explanation, also Occam's razor, which would be that they had some sort of, tool that they were using for some sort of backdoor or something for testing and analysis, and someone forgot that it was there, and that it was not something that was, is very specific for one specific thing, and they just
Here's Steve's response to that, which is it's been there for 5 years. It's been updated on a regular basis. It's been fixed. It's been patched. There has been some maintenance done on it. So it's hard to say Apple didn't know it was there. Almost impossible to say Apple didn't know it was there. Plus, they were able to turn it off very quickly without any impact on the machine. Maybe it was a debugging tool. It was highly secured. It's a very interesting story. And I guess the real point is exactly what the point you made, Amy, which is we should not assume that these devices are private.
Actually, no. Now my brain is swimming right now listening to all of this because it's a form of gain of function research. So in biology, the way we used to get to new drugs was to intentionally mutate viruses to make them really, really bad. And then the theory, this all predates computers, but the theory was if you could figure out what direction, like what's the next bad thing, then we get ahead of it and we create some type of antiviral or some type of therapeutic or vaccine or whatever in advance to manage it. And many, many moons ago, that's how we managed the flu and the flu vaccine. But what you got me thinking is, I wonder if this was like gain of function research, but for like phones and software. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And this is how the bad things happen because nobody thinks it'll get out or they think they can keep it secret or whatever. And
well, certainly that's one of the things that governments always say is, well, you can have a backdoor. We'll keep it private.
Yeah.
And I think we also know that by now, no backdoor ever goes unopened, unlocked.
No, but I think the tech companies believe that we have short memories. And I think for the most part we do. But when you start like that I remember that whole thing with San Bernardino and law enforcement sort of making a big case for why the backdoors were necessary, right?
Very public case, yes.
They couldn't have possibly just gone away. So maybe this is that.
Yeah,
maybe there's
a
wondering.
Longer
story here.
Yeah. No, we were wondering. There was a lot of speculation that maybe they found somebody like what was it, Cellbrite, that was able. Cellbrite. Yeah, that was able to read the phone, so they didn't need it after all. Because the FBI backed down.
Well, they said as much. They found it. It was an Israeli company. I can't remember.
Right, Cellbrite.
Or it was someone else.
Yep.
And
they never revealed who it was, but everybody assumed it was Cellbrite.
But they revealed that they were able to get access otherwise. The thing that I guess, and it's not that I have any doubt that if they, their fingers, if they were forced, that they would, comply with the law and whatnot. But if you're going to put in a backdoor at the insistence of the NSA, and you've been so vociferous writing op-eds in the New York Times and speaking, publicly on 60 Minutes and making a very clear case that you are adamantly opposed to doing this, sending your own representatives to congressional hearings, again, these things always come out. It just there's a certain amount of risk mitigation that just doesn't make sense to be you're so publicly against this.
Well, what's the transaction?
18 months later, right?
What do they gain? That's what I'm trying to think through.
Well, I think the only thing
something.
the only thing I think they would gain would be basically we won't let you operate otherwise. But again, to your point, that's a good point, which is
they can't not let them operate otherwise.
Right. Why not make that public then if this was something that was happening? I mean, I feel like that would
couldn't if it was an NSL. So the Patriot Act allows for these requests from law enforcement, from government agencies, through a FISA court that cannot be revealed by the premise is, well, we don't want the subject of the investigation to know that we're investigating them. So this NSL says you may not disclose that we have asked for this information or that you have provided it. And so there is a mechanism under the Patriot Act for a FISA court to approve a request from a government agency.
Got it. And that would be the justification for allowing it to be by default put on everybody's phone.
Yeah, and I think Apple would do exactly what seems to have been done here, which is, okay, but we're going to make this really secure. This is a well-designed backdoor, not the kind of thing you'd put in for debugging. This is something that's designed not to be discovered.
But I guess my question would be, like, how would, I mean, because you're right that they could use the Patriot Act to, prevent them, to compel them to not make any sort of statements. But I'm still not sure how they could basically say, you have to engineer this. Like, if the NSA already had some sort of backdoor ready to go, that's one thing. But I don't know how they could reasonably say, okay, your engineers have to come up with a solution, right?
Well, that was Apple's defense, remember, in the San Bernardino case and others, is we'd have to invest resources in. You're asking us to rewrite how we do stuff. I don't know. I mean, that defense never got to court because the FBI dropped it.
Right. And I understand that, but I'm just saying, but I don't think that argument goes away, right? Because even if you're compelled to do something, you might not have the engineering resources to do it, right? Like, you might not be able to do something, especially in the clever way that it's been done.
Well, to some degree, Apple would have to cooperate, right? What you're arguing is that Apple would have to say, okay, all right, we'll do it.
Of course they would. I mean that there's no way if what you're saying is what happened that they did this without cooperating. And I guess my question is just the Occam's razor and me questions that just a little bit, just because all of their public statements, which have massive implications on their business here and in other countries and everything else, and their reputation and everything else, have been so against that, and that it. I don't know, like that's the thing to me.
It certainly runs contrary to Apple's public position, and I think I don't think that Apple, I'm not implying that Apple willingly went there. Mm-hmm. I'm really saying that Apple did not see a choice. It's just the same problem Apple faces in Russia. In fact, that's why they got out of Russia. It probably faces in China, too big a market to leave. It's facing in India right now, where if you do business in a country, the laws of the country hold. And you either leave the country or you comply. And I think especially in this country, Apple is probably going to comply. This is just from Steve's show notes, by the way. I'll show you this. This is the super secret, by the way, amazing reverse engineering on the part of Kaspersky. This is this 256-byte lookup table of random numbers that you would need to have this information in order to use this exploit. So this is another piece of the puzzle, is if this, Apple put this in the iPhone. They put this mechanism in the iPhone. Why? But also, how did it escape? You got a great movie there, a great novel. How did this 256-byte information get out?
This may not, it's a bit of a complicated premise, I guess, for a great movie. But man, I did talk to the documentary filmmaker Alex Gibney, who is out there like pumping out a ton of movies every year. And he did this thing called 0 Days about Stuxnet in 2016.
I remember.
I had a good interview with him there. And he basically likened to, these like the NSO stuff to like nuclear weapons. Like there are conversations we need to be having about these exploits. And this could be a big one if somebody keeps digging.
It's very interesting. Anyway, I want to point people to the Steve Gibson show. It was Security Now for this week, episode 955. His show notes are online at twit.tv/SN955 if you want to read the write-up or listen to the show. Listening to him, he made a very strong argument. I actually was the one who made him go to the NSA. That was my thinking, but his argument is this is an intentional backdoor. I'm the one who's saying, not Steve, I'm the one who's saying, well, that sounds like something that the NSA could do and perhaps would do. It's a really great novel or movie. And if anybody wants to option it, you can contact Steve. All right. I think I wanted to. one more story. I always do these at the end of every show. If there is a story, I like to talk about the pioneers, the computer pioneers who are no longer with us. On New Year's Day, Swiss computer scientist Professor Niklaus Wirth died. He was the creator of Pascal. He was actually the creator of many languages, including Algol, an operating system. Really one of the most important people in the early days of computer software. And he certainly will be mourned. Niklaus Wirth passed at 89.
Register had a great write-up of that, by the way. You just flashed that screenshot.
Yeah.
I would encourage everybody to read that because I was not familiar with this guy, but it is a very informative and really compelling write-up of his life. Yeah.
And I was very much aware of him because of used Pascal was one of the first programming language for the Mac, the first high-level language for the Mac. And so I used it. And you may remember Philippe Kahn and Borland International, which made a very fast Pascal compiler called Turbo Pascal. Yeah. That was the beginning of their business.
That just turned 40 a couple weeks ago.
Wow. Yeah. For some reason, I think Wirth also was involved with the mouse. He worked at Xerox PARC for a while. I feel like Logitech was an outspring of his work, also a Swiss company. But really an important person in computer science. Yeah, I agree with you. You should read the great piece in the Register.
Really well written, too.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great show. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the help and the support and the brilliance of all three of you. I do want to mention that the kind of stories we do here on TWiT are unique. I mean, I don't think you're going to hear, I doubt, maybe we'll hear it on Engadget, but I doubt will there be a lot of coverage, for instance, about this backdoor. But we really, I think, have some very smart people here. We bring in smart people. And we really try to talk about technology in an informed, intelligent way. I think this is programming you need, we all need going into 2024, especially with the advent of AI, some really challenging, thorny issues in technology. And that's what we do. Without fear or favor, we don't have any vested interest in any technology company. We speak the truth as best we can see it. And we need your help. To be perfectly frank, there's 11 ways you can help us. We actually have an article on the website on all the ways you can help us. I would suggest if you work for a company that might want to advertise on TWiT that has a product that our audience would be interested in, that you email advertise@twit.tv. That would be one way you can really help. And actually, we've gotten some very good connections through that. But I also invite you to join Club TWiT if you're not already a member. Club TWiT we created this a couple of years ago because we saw the ad apocalypse coming. And so many podcasts have disappeared. Even podcast networks have disappeared because advertising dollars are moving away from podcasting. Why? Because we can't spy on you like YouTube and Spotify and Google and Facebook can. Well, there's a way to make up that loss of revenue, and that's the club. $7 a month. That's all we ask. We give you benefits, I think. Some really good benefits, ad-free versions of all of our shows, special versions of our shows that are only done in the club, like iOS Today. That's moved into the club. Home Theater Geeks, Hands on Mac, Hands on Windows. It's quite a bit of original content. We're going to do our book group in a couple of weeks. You also get access to the Club TWiT Discord, a wonderful community of like-minded nerds. We love talking tech at twit.tv/clubtwit. If you're not yet a member, consider joining. The real reason to join, of course, is to keep us afloat and keep us going because we really believe in what we're doing and we think it's very important. If you get value out of what we do, please join the club. twit.tv/clubtwit. All right, that's the begging bowl. I have to do that. I hate to do it, but unfortunately,
it's a good reminder, Leo. Like, listen, I produce content too. It's like I tell people, if you love something, pay for it. Like, please.
Well, it's unfortunate because in the early days of the internet, everything was free, and we forgot that it costs money. It ain't really free. It's either you're seeing ads or they're spying on you or something. And I like being an ad-supported network. I think that's a great way to go. But advertisers really decided they want to know more about their audience. I'm sure your Engadget faces the same kind of pressures. It's
Engadget. It's also, the Filmcast, my movie podcast as well. Like, it took us a long, like, we were around since 2008, and we didn't really we had a few ads, but it wasn't until we hit a Patreon where I think we got a lot of support.
That's what it takes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then, but you know what? That's what podcasting is about. It's about a community. And if you have a community, and the community likes what you do, they should support it, and then you can keep doing it. Filmcast is a great example. You're up to 755 episodes.
We're up there. We've been going strong.
Congratulations.
We just did our 2023 top 10. Yeah,
nice.
Thank you.
Nice. Devindra, Jeff Kanata, who I love, David Chen. If you're into film, you got to be into the Filmcast. What?
Check us out. We got to get you back on, Christina, at some point.
Yeah, I would love to be back on. That would be amazing. Yeah, that's actually, I think, how we first met. Devindra.
Yes.
Was,
Oh,
not
you're
even
kidding.
Things. Yeah, it was actually through the Filmcast, not even through like my tech writing. Yeah.
Devindra, it's great to have you on. Thank you, senior editor at Engadget at Devindra. I'm sure there's some children who want you to read a story to them. So I appreciate your spending.
I've been playing Zelda. I've been playing Tears of the Kingdom with my daughter. Like, that is our bedtime.
Oh my God. How old is she?
She's 5 now. So I understand bad to do these things so early, but she likes it.
I think it's like, it's no different than reading her a story, right?
Mm-hmm. And we talk about it every day, and she talks about like, I can't wait to see what happens when we go here. And I think
that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's just the modern Lord of the Rings. My mom read the Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Yep.
That's really neat. It's amazing. What a world we live in. Christina Warren, it's so great to have you again. Rocket Takeover anytime. You say the word.
Thank you.
Senior developer advocate at GitHub, where you do such a good job.
Thank you so much.
You'll find her on Mastodon as film_girl. She's at mastodon.social, but you can follow her from our own Mastodon if you want. Twit.social.
Sure,
that's what I do. Thank you, Christina. What's the hot sneaker of the day? Anything?
I haven't bought anything in a while.
What?
Oh, no, actually, no, that's not true. I recently got some custom Converse, some GitHub custom Converse.
Nice.
That are really good. So it's really
do they have the little GitHub kitty cat on it, or what's the deal?
They do. They have the Octocat. Yeah. I just got some of those, and those are really cool.
Nice.
Those are my newest shoes.
Very cool. Some Octocat sneakers.
Yeah.
And Amy Webb, the Greg LeMond of TWiT, riding off into the sunset on her Zwift bike. Maybe it'd be better to go to futuretodayinstitute.com. But
yes.
you should have a fan club. Do you have people, on the side of the road cheering you on?
Oh, you mean on the bike? I was going to say there is a club. They're not necessarily fans. I hear from people all the time.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, no, look, let me say this. If there's ever a race in your town, whether it's a marathon or a cycling race or whatever it is, I know it can be annoying because streets are closed, but it's also an opportunity for a community to come together. And even if you don't know anything about cycling or whatever, running or, step outside and cheer people on for a few minutes. It'll make them feel good. It'll make you feel good. And, it's a nice thing we can do for each other in this age of AI.
That's such a good idea. Get outside, breathe some fresh air, and cheer on your local cycling club. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if there's no race, just like go outside. Yeah. It's a good thing to do.
Touch grass is a good philosophy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Touch grass every day and feel the sky every day. That's what Lisa says. She says, I have to feel the sun every day. Are those Meta glasses that you're wearing, Amy? I have to ask.
No, I think these. No, I would not wear those. These are just regular old glasses my husband made me.
Oh, that was nice of him. I just got glasses that are made out of old vinyl records.
Oh, cool. Do they have? Can you see what they were? I guess it's
no. The ones I have a Fleetwood Mac album. I think they're called Fleetwoods. And then they also have a model called AC/DC, SEE. Huh. It's a company's called, cool. You should tell your husband about it. It's called Vinylize.
I will absolutely
Vinylize. And you can see the grooves. If you tilt your head just right, you can see the grooves on the frames. It's hysterical.
Okay. This is terrible for you to tell me this because now I'm going to
Vinylize.com. They have AC/DC, Miles Davis.
I love this.
Now let's go back to we can full circle this copyright. So is Miles Davis cool with you wearing glasses?
I don't think you can play these back. It's such a short groove. And honestly, I wonder, I don't know. Maybe they really, I don't know. Are they really
Let's ask OpenAI.
Records or Fleetwood Mac records. Look these are so cool though. Because you can see the grooves that the vinyl was made out of.
They are cool.
Yeah, they're a little nerdy. They make me look like the guy from Up, but that's okay.
I think those sections of audio would be short enough to fall under fair use anyway, right?
Yeah, that's less than a second. That's for sure. Thank you, Amy Webb. Thank you, Devindra Hardawar. Thank you, Christina Warren. So great to have you on. We'll have you on again soon. Thank you all for watching us. We do TWiT Sundays, 2 to 5 Pacific time. That's 5 to 8 p.m. Eastern time, 2200 UTC. We do stream it live on YouTube, youtube.com/TWiT. When the show begins, the feed will begin. But of course, if you're a club member, we keep it running the whole time. So join the club, please. We'd love to have you. After the fact, you can get ad-supported versions of our show at the website, twit.tv. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to This Week in Tech. And, of course, the best way to listen, the way we encourage you to listen, is with your favorite podcast player. We personally like podcasts, but any of them will do. That way you'll have it to listen whenever you feel like it, perhaps for your Monday morning commute. I'm Leo Laporte. We thank our producer and technical director and editor, Benito Gonzalez, our studio manager, Jammer B, our executive producer, Lisa Laporte, and all of you for listening. Another TWiT is in the can. Bye-bye.
This is amazing.